welcome to episode 72 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So, we do quite a few series on this, and we also are, serial series lovers.
I feel like it's almost been exclusively series. I don't know if we've done one-off book. Maybe Solitaire?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking Solitaire, but it's also part of a larger universe, so it's not even. Every book that she's written is in the same universe.
Yeah, I hope you guys don't hate us when we don't finish a series. Because, we did Shadow and Bone, but we haven't touched any of the other ones.
Yeah, we jumped to this series.
Yeah, I don't like Mal. I like Book Mal, but, the show sort of... No, I don't like Book Mal.
Yeah.
So, I don't really want to keep reading about it.
That's fair, yeah. My niece literally is reading it now, and she is turning 12 this month. But she was, 3 chapters into Shadow and Bone, and she was like, is it bad that I ship Alina and the Darkling? And I was like, eee.
No, because we do too.
I know, 100%. I was like, it's amazing. I was like, I do too. But I'm sorry. not to get into spoilers. Although we already got into a spoiler last week about the Darkling anyway, so.
Yeah. And there's going to be a spoiler this week about Alina, so.
Yeah. So, I almost feel like, well, I know you didn't, but you looked it up. I almost feel like you need to either read it or not care about spoilers if you're going to get into this duology.
Yeah.
So I don't feel as bad about spoilers for that series.
Yeah, well, it's just one of those things. If you care, you either don't care at all about Shadow and Bone, in which case you're not really going to understand the spoilers anyway.
And it doesn't matter because you're not going to read it if you don't care.
And it's just passing content.
Yeah.
And I feel like it does spoil it a little small bit, but, not enough if you did care where you would be bothered about it.
Yeah.
You don't really understand the spoilers but anyway until you've read it or looked into what happens.
Yeah. Other than that very specific one that they don't end up together. That the Darkling and Alina don't end up together.
But, who honestly expects them to?
Me.
You don't expect them to. You hope they will, but you know they're not going to end up together.
Yeah.
He's been too much of a dick.
My niece really did. She just finished the first one and she was like, I hate this. And I was like, at least she'll meet a new character in book 2 and maybe you can love him.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. I guess I'll give her these books and break her heart too, so.
It's fine.
Whatever.
True. Anyway, but besides that, the fact that, we've gotten off on a tangent, we're doing our Would You Rather this week is, would you rather read a series as it comes out, as it's released, or wait for it to all be done?
I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, because, I feel like I would prefer to read it after it's complete, because then you don't have to worry about the cliffhangers and that kind of shit, but if I find sometimes then, if it's, a long series, if I started Throne of Glass after it was complete, I don't know if I ever would have gotten through it, because there's just so much happening.
Yeah, I guess.
What I mean? And there's so many books that it's just overwhelming to even start it. A 3-book trilogy, I'm like, cool, I can read 3 books, maybe.
Yeah.
The last trilogy that I tried to read was Cruel Prince, and that didn't go well. But, if, you know what I mean? I feel like that's doable, but then when you look at Throne of Glass, and it's the last book is giant, and I can't even imagine if I wasn't reading Crescent City as it comes out, I don't know if I'd be able to do it.
I see that, but in my opinion, I would still rather wait for them to all be out, because then I can read it at my leisure without having to wait. Because, think about it. we have waited, we're going to be waiting, what, 2 years for Crescent City 3 after Crescent City 2, a give or take, like a few months.
Yeah.
So, right now, we forget so much of what happens in Crescent City 2, because it's been over a year since we've read it. So we're gonna have to read it again before Crescent City 3 comes out.
Yeah.
So, like, at least if the entire series is out, you don't have to binge read it all in, like, the span of a month or a week. But, and you can take it a little bit at a time, but at least then you are controlling how quickly you read it, as opposed to having to wait months and months and months and then forget about what happens and then have to do rereads. Like, I would much rather everything be out, and I can, if I'm into it, then I can go right one after another, right? Whereas if I'm not into it, I can just ignore it.
Yeah, that's true. Like, I completely get that. And when it's a series that I don't care as much about, and I'm waiting for a book to come out, and I'm not going to do a reread, then I'm kind of like, shit, I completely forget everything that's happening when a new book comes out. Because that's what happened to me for the third book in From Blood and Ash. Because I was like, I don't think I can physically read those two. Like, again, there's so many other books on my TBR. I'd already read them. I was like, I should remember enough. Then I was reading the third one, and I was like, I don't know anything. So, like, it's good that we did our reread for this, and now we'll get through. Maybe I'll finish the third one at some point. But if it's a book series that I love, I almost like the waiting for it. Like, it's some of my, like, favorite memories from childhood is the Harry Potter books coming out and, like, the midnight releases and being so excited to get the book and then going home and just, like, reading through the night because you're, like, so excited for it, you know?
I guess I just, like, I feel like that nostalgia, you can't recreate that.
But I felt that for the, like, 7th Throne of Glass book.
Did you?
Yes.
I was excited for it, but, like, I didn't get that same feeling that I remember having as a kid. Because, because just life gets in the way. Like, you have to go to work. I have to take care of my children and make sure they are fed. Like, you know, like, I have to, cats, same thing.
Yeah.
If I don't feed my cats, they're going to hate me.
That's true.
So, like, I feel like when you're a kid and a book comes out, you can devote, like, a whole weekend to just reading. You don't have responsibilities in the same way.
Yeah, I don't know. Because, like, it came out on a Friday night at midnight, and I had to swim at 5:45 the next morning. But I was just like, fuck this. I'm reading through. And I just stayed up all night reading, and then I, like, went swimming, and then I came home and read again until I fell asleep.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I don't know, I like the anticipation and, like, the excitement and that being able to think of theories and not having spoilers, because, like, when a series is out, you could easily get a spoiler for it before you can finish it, and I don't like spoilers. Spoiler alert.
But, like, that happened to me with Crescent City 2 as soon as it came out because I didn't read it fast enough.
Yeah. I just didn't go on many social medias until I was finished it.
It's a problem.
Yeah. Well, people spoiling it that fast is just, like, super shitty. And that was the thing with Harry Potter when it was coming out, too, is, like, people would spoil what was happening. Which I just hate. I'm like, why do you have to do that? So mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like, and this is a non-answer, but I feel like if I like a series, I like the, like, being able to theorize about it, read through it, try to find, like, breadcrumbs and that kind of shit. But if I don't really care about it, then I'd rather wait till it's finished. Because I don't want to reread it.
Yeah.
So, that's not an answer.
Well,
it's my final one.
It's my final non-answer.
Yes.
I think I would rather have it be done.
Yeah. That's fair.
I think I'm more firmly in that camp.
Yeah.
Because, like, when ACOTAR was out, because I found ACOTAR when it was just ACOTAR. ACOMAF hadn't been released yet. Or maybe it was, like, 2 weeks away from being released, or a month or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, as soon as it came out, I was like, yes, and I read it. And then I had to wait, like, a whole 1.5 years, 2 years for ACOWAR.
Mm-hmm.
It was brutal. I hated my life.
Yeah.
So, like, no, man.
Yeah.
No.
I almost feel like if, this is a bit shitty too, but like if I cared more about Bryce and Hunt, not to get into Crescent City too much, but it is like the most anticipated book that I think we both are waiting for.
Yeah.
If I cared more about them, I think I would want the book faster, but like
yeah.
My biggest thing is I'm like, fuck, it's going to be so goddamn long and it's going to take forever to read and I need to read it semi-fast. I'm already exhausted.
Yeah. I know. But I'm annoyed because it comes out right at, and this is going to be silly, but it comes out right at midterm report card time for me.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah.
So, like, I'm going to have to deal with report cards and, like, correcting stuff that's coming in late and, like, parent-teacher interviews, like, right around that time. So, bleh.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
If any parents are listening, don't schedule an interview. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Imagine.
Oh my god, can you imagine if I did that? If I sent out an email and said, so listen, guys. A book I've been waiting for 2 years just came out, so therefore I'm not taking interviews at this time.
I'm only taking interviews the days before the 30th, nothing on the 30th or after.
Give me 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, god. Literally. It's just so long.
Would not happen. I also don't think my principal would be very happy with me if I did.
Oh my, imagine. Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. So, yeah.
After all that,
lots of chat, lots of stuff. So, just a heads up, everyone. Obviously, we're not a spoiler-free zone. We've gotten into spoilers already, and we only just started. And things might get a little saucy.
Yeah, so this week is week 2 of Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, the second book in the Six of Crows duology. This week we are reading chapters 9 to 16, and I don't know about you, but so much stuff happens in my section this week.
Yeah.
Like, so much. Like, it just kept going and going and going, and I was like, how is more stuff happening?
Yeah.
But just, it keeps coming, and there are revelations upon revelations, and like, I know in your section there's another big revelation, and I'm like, what? It's just so much goes on. So brace yourselves, people.
Yes.
Okay, so last week we ended off with the exchange of Inej for Van Eck's wife Alice happening. So like Kaz and the pregnant wife and Van Eck and Inej are on the bridge, and they're about to make an exchange. And then we had that, like, cliffhanger of Jesper making a signal to Matthias indicating that something was up, something was happening. Mm-hmm. So, we start this week in Kaz's point of view. So, he is on the bridge, obviously, with the pregnant wife, and he sees Van Eck walking across the bridge. And he thinks to himself that Van Eck has a really bad poker face. Mm-hmm. And, like, so he knows that something is up. Like, knows that Van Eck's gonna, like, try something. And he also notices that somebody broke his nose. Pretty sure it was Inej.
Yeah, it was. I love it.
It's hilarious. And Kaz is also surprised, so Van Eck has surrounded himself with his personal guard and has them all decked out in, like, uniform, like a livery, almost. So, like, it's putting him as a very obvious, like, just really sticking, like, making himself stick out. Mm-hmm. And he's surprised because Kaz picked a bridge in the barrel, so in, like, the seedy part of Ketterdam, and he didn't think Van Eck would want to, like, make himself that, like, pronounced. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
make it obvious that it was him.
Yeah, considering he's such a, like, an upstanding member of the merchant community. You know what I mean? So, like, why would he want to be there? But he also knew that because they had, like, taken his wife right out from under his nose sort of a thing, and, like, outsmarted him a little bit, he's gonna want to try and, like, recoup some of that pride, some of that ego. So, like, Kaz knew he had to be prepared for anything.
Yeah.
And he said he felt like the situation mirrored the one from 7 days ago, like them sort of having a standoff. But he said that the time before, he let his attention shift to Inej, and that caused them to lose, and is what caused her to get kidnapped. So he said he wasn't going to make the same mistake again. So he said, the way he described it and explained it, he sort of said that he was, like, choked that boy, like, and killed that boy, and only left, like, the cold, calculating, like, dirty hands, I guess, like, the conniving sort of person left. Like, he got rid of the boy who would want to look to Inej.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, was that what you were referring to when you said, like, we find out why he's been a bit more of a dick?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is why. Because he knew that weakness is what caused them to lose and what caused her to be kidnapped. So he was trying to get rid of that weakness. So yeah, so he knows he has, like, 2 goals for the mission. Is free Inej is the first one, and then make Van Eck pay. And, like, he's literally spent the last week rethinking all of his mistakes about the meeting, and all of Van Eck's mistakes, too. And, like, I guess he's got, like, an eidetic memory, because he remembers, like, everything that everybody said, where everybody was standing, and it's, like, he remembered that Van Eck bragged about his pregnant wife, so that's why he chose to exploit that weakness.
Yeah.
So he notices that Inej's feet were shackled, like, with, iron, like, cuffs, I guess, like, feet shackles.
Yeah.
And her hands were bound behind her back with rope.
Feet handcuffs.
Feet handcuffs, yeah! Feet cuffs.
Feet cuffs. I love it.
Anyway, he's, like, real pissed that they did that to her and that she's dealing with that, but, like, he also understands, obviously, why they did it.
Yeah.
Because if she's not
She's
bound,
badass.
Yeah, if she's not bound, she is gonzo.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, he wants to kill Van Eck, but he also knows he needs to have some patience. So a really weird exchange happens here between Kaz and Alice, like, Van Eck's wife.
Yeah.
She asked if she thought Van Eck was handsome, and thinks that he could have been handsome if he were younger. And they have a little conversation about, like, you know, he's like, if you didn't think he was handsome, why'd you marry him? And she was like, oh, the money is good. And he was like, yeah, but you could have married someone young and handsome, or, like, young and rich. And she was like, well, that's the dream. Yeah. And he was like, why settle for just young and rich? You could have gone royal. And I'm like, who is this girl where she could get a prince? Like,
I don't think that she could, but I think, like, she's just so, I don't want to say dumb, because that's a bit much, but, like, she's so naive, maybe?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, I don't know, I think it's supposed to show that, like, she's just, like, flowing through life, and, like, whatever. Like, money's good, I'll marry this guy. Yeah. Like, it's just so weird.
Yeah. I just wonder what makes her so desirable. Cause,
but I think he was joking. I don't think she could actually get a prince.
No, I know, but just in saying that, like, remember, in your section that's upcoming, so I'm not really gonna spoil it, we learn what Van Eck did in order to marry this girl. Like, the steps he took to marry this girl. So I just wonder, like, why...
But I don't know if it was... I don't think it was
to marry her specifically.
Yeah, I think it was just to remarry.
I guess.
But it still, she's obviously...
She must have some attributes that make her desirable.
I feel like she's pretty, because Inej, I think in the first week, like last week, was even like, how do they have like this handsome young music teacher for her when like what's his face? Oh my god. Van Eyck must be really confident in himself if he's gonna let this young handsome guy be around her.
Right.
And then when Bajan finds out that she was kidnapped, Inej sees that he looks stricken, and she's like, oh shit, I think he's in love with her.
Right.
So I'm assuming she must be really pretty.
Yeah. Well, because we know she can't sing, and she's not particularly bright.
It's like, reminds me of
a Cinderella story.
Yes, exactly.
You're not very pretty, and you're not very bright.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Oh my god, I love it. Amazing.
Yeah.
Good job.
Anyway, so they approach each other. Van Eyck repeats that, like, you know, our deal is still on, like, I want Kuwait for the year to Perem, but Kaz sort of reiterates, yeah, our deal is still on. You'll get Kuwait when I get my 30 million Kruga.
Yeah.
And Van Eyck's like, but I don't have it at the moment. And Kaz is like, fine, I'll take Kuwait to market then, and I'll get the 30 million that way. Like,
yeah.
And so then they make the exchange. But before they do that, Van Eyck asks Alice a question because I guess he's nervous that maybe they tailored somebody to look like her the same way they did with Wylan. So they ask her what they're calling the baby. What names have they picked out? Because I guess it's only been a chat the two of them have. The names they've chosen are god-awful, by the way.
Yeah.
So apparently if it's a boy, they're going to name it after Van Eyck and name it Jan. Which is bad enough. But if it's a girl, they're going to name it Plumja. Plumia,
well,
Plumie, I don't... Plumje.
But my favorite part is he's like, no, we didn't decide on that.
No, yeah, he's like, no, I didn't decide that name. You're naming your parrot that, or something like that.
Yeah. Which I just love, because I'm like, amazing.
Yeah. But it actually does show, like, a softer side to him. Like, he does, you know what I mean? Like, although, that goes away. Like, my, I don't feel bad for him at all.
Yeah.
But, still. Anyway, so that, like, interaction satisfies him. Yes, okay, that's my wife. So they make the exchange. As soon as Inej is with Kaz, he feels something off. And Van Eyck screams then, loudly, for everybody to hear, that he swore, like, that Kaz swore that he would return his wife and son, and asks him where Wylan is. And then he calls for the Stad Watch to storm and they storm the bridge. And they're like, don't let him escape! So they've got, like, both ends of the bridge covered. So Kaz knows this is what he was doing. He made it seem like Kaz was ransoming both his wife and son and only returned one of those people.
It's pretty smart.
It is,
like, I'll give him that.
Smart. Yeah.
Because, like, they can't even give Wylan back because he
doesn't
look
like
himself.
Nope.
It's so smart.
Yeah.
So smart.
Anyway, so Kaz, like, quickly, and I mean quickly, gets Inej free from her shackles and tells her, essentially tells her, the flower barge. And then she's like, okay, and then she jumps off the bridge. Amazing. And then Kaz does, like, a signal to Jesper to set their plan in motion. And step one of that plan, fireworks. In the middle of the day. It's amazing. And then Kaz takes this, like, thing out of his pocket. It's like, it's one of those things that you imagine from a spy movie that cannot be real. It's like a reel of rope that's got, like, a mechanism. So he attaches one end to his cane and one end to the bridge and just jumps off. And it's, like, a mechanized thing that, like, lowers you lowers him down, and he lands on this, like, flower barge. And, again, so that's where he meets, and that's where Inej is. Apparently there are also Stadwatch boats in the canal, and that surprised Kaz, but at the same time, Wylan had already managed to, like, get a water bomb or something, and blew a hole in the barge, which, not the flower barge, but in the Stadwatch boats, like, managed to blow holes in it, to, like, distract the Stadwatch people and sort of, like, take them down. And they managed to do it during the fireworks explosions, so, like, the boom was just, like, no one heard that that's what it was.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't understand how he was surprised and yet still had a plan.
Yeah, he does that. Like, I don't... Or did Wylan just come up with this one on his own? Like,
no, because in the next chapter, we get Jesper's point of view, and he says that Wylan goes to deal with the water bombs.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's just bizarre. So Inej is, like, strapping all of her knives on her person, and Kaz gets 2 red cloaks and masks that they had stashed and some flowers on the barge, and they dress in the costumes. And then Kaz grabs Inej and tugs on the rope, which activates the mechanism to raise them back up. So, like, it's a really cool, like, spy thing.
It is, yeah.
That I want. I don't know how or when I would use it, but I just want it.
You would use it, and that's what matters.
It'd help me, like, put Christmas decorations on my outside of my house.
Amazing. That's pretty smart.
Anyway, so when they get back up to the top of the bridge, things look very different. And it was only in the span of, like, 1 to 2 minutes. But there are 50 to 70 people in the exact same costume as Kaz and Inej. And they're all tossing these coins in the air, and tourists are clamoring to, like, grab them. And it's chaos, and the Stadwatch is obviously, like, trying to get around all these people. But when you see money on the ground, are you going to listen to the police, or are you going to get your money?
Well, you're going to get your money.
You're going to get your money. So, like, the Stadwatch are being like, move, move, but everyone's like, fuck you, dude, and going for the coins on the ground. And so, like, obviously they're in this group of 70 people that looks just like them. So they are just, like, they're escaping by blending in with the crowd, and they all look the same. So they start to escape, and all of a sudden they hear a boom. And initially they're like, think it's normal, but then people who were just, like, laughing and carrying on having a good time, people start running and screaming, and some woman is running away, and she's, like, got blood or something on her, and they're like, what is happening? And then they notice that somebody has actually blown a hole in the white rose, which we read about in the last book. I don't quite remember. Is it it's gonna sound crass. Is it like a brothel?
Yeah, isn't it the one that...
It's the one Nina worked at.
Yeah.
But I didn't think Nina worked as a...
No, she didn't, but other girls there did. So she just worked as, like, she helped people with their emotions and shit. Right. But other girls that worked there worked for other reasons.
Right. Okay, so it was a brothel. So, like, so Inej is like, did you do this? And he was like, no, man, like, this wasn't us. Like, he was just trying to cause, like, mayhem. He wasn't trying to cause genuine, like, harm to anybody.
Yeah.
So they just, like, race down the alley and escape. They're like, whatever, let's get out of here. So they do. Skip to Jesper's POV now, and it sort of backtracks. Like, the thing that I really enjoy about this book is that, like, we get a piece in somebody's point of view, and then we get the exact same thing happen in someone else's point of view, and it's, like, different stuff happening, so you see it from a different angle. So we are about to listen/read the exact same time frame, but it's Jesper's actions now.
Yeah, and they do that a lot in, like, later chapters too. Like, I also really enjoy it because it's, you get the full story. You're not just like, and then after all of this is what happened type thing.
Yeah. You're not having, like, instead of having, like, somebody come to you and be like, and now the clue up, right? Yeah. It's you're reading it as it happens from the different perspectives, instead of hearing it from one person's perspective at the very end.
Yeah.
So Jesper's POV, so he had 2 jobs for this exchange. One before and one after. Apparently his before was that he had to keep his gun on Van Eck, like he had a sniper, I think, a sniper rifle or something. Mm-hmm. He had to keep it trained on Van Eck at all the time. He wasn't allowed to kill him, but he was allowed, if he was getting, if he did anything suspect, he was allowed to shoot him.
Yeah.
And maybe take off a limb or 2.
Yeah. Sure.
So him and Kaz and Wylan, they'd all chatted before the exchange, and Kaz knew that Van Eck was going to try something, but he also knew that whatever it was, it would be sloppy, because he had less than 12 hours to plan it.
Yeah.
So they had to come up with an escape plan that allowed them a way to escape in every way possible, to essentially account for every possible scenario. So they had to come up with the broadest escape plan. So from the, I guess, the last week when Jesper was signaling Matthias, Jesper had actually seen the Stad Watch coming, and that's why he was signaling to Matthias that something was wrong, because the Stad Watch were circling. Mm-hmm. But he still didn't move and didn't change the plan until Kaz had given him the signal, and then he was the one who lit up all the fireworks that Wylan had made. And then he left the area. Him and Nina were stationed, like, close to each other. So the fireworks that he lit were a signal for the people that Nina and Matthias recruited last night by giving out all those costumes. Remember, we talked about they gave out like 200 plus costumes to people, and were just like, here, have a costume. Like, this is a promotion. So apparently they promised all these people they were giving costumes to free food and wine for anybody that came to the bridge for the promotion of this place, the Crimson Cutlass. They said it was a gambling hall, but it's not real. It's made up.
It's pretty smart.
It is very smart. So, with the costumes, they actually handed out bags of fake gold, which is what everybody was throwing everywhere and what all the tourists were clamoring for. Do you think they knew it was fake?
I think they say that, like, so this is common because it has something to do with the play.
Yes, there's a, yeah, you're right.
And I think they say that, like, sometimes it's real money and sometimes it's fake, and that's why people always clamor for it. So, like, it's just chance, kind of.
Right. Anyway, so Wylan, again, what we said, goes off to detonate those water bombs that he somehow had ready to go. So Jesper puts on his costume. He has one as well. And he meets Nina, who's wearing her costume, and they head out into the crowd, and they're doing what everyone else is doing. They're throwing money and whatever. They're all leaving, like, so eventually Matthias and Wylan, like, end up close to them as well. But the plan is for the 4 of them to leave, like, separately, and then meet later on back at their hideout. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they don't want to get caught together. So Jesper was thinking about, like, after leaving, to maybe finding a gambling hall for a little bit, like, just to scratch the itch. Like, I guess he hasn't had a chance to gamble in a few days, so scratch his addiction itch. But he knows, like, it's like, even knowing it's a bad idea, he still plans on doing it. Like, he knows people are looking for him. He knows Kaz would be mad, like, but he's still gonna do it anyway.
Yeah.
So as he's thinking about it, he gets caught in the explosion with Nina. And automatically he knows that Wylan didn't do this.
Mm-hmm. Wylan's a good boy.
Yeah. And probably would have told them.
Well, yes, that too.
So, like, Nina, I guess, goes to the ground, and Jesper, like, sees that she's got a gash in her head, like, she's bleeding, but it's not anything really bad. But she knows that it's the White Rose that exploded, so she, again, like we said, used to work there, so she wants to go and help the people in there.
Mm-hmm.
But then, all of a sudden, another explosion goes off at the anvil. I don't know if they say what type of business it is.
I don't think we got this one in the last book.
No, we didn't.
So I'm not sure what it is.
But it's another, like, seedy business in the barrel, so, like, take your pick.
Yeah.
Could be a tavern, it could be a gambling hall, like, it could be anything.
Yeah.
And then they see somebody shoot into the air, and they see the man with wings that we had from the prologue. So, like, finally the shit from the prologue is making its appearance.
Yeah, exactly.
Because up until now, it has made no sense.
Yeah.
Now it is. And obviously the man with wings had somebody in his arms. So Nina recognizes the person in the arms of the wingy guy. It's a Grisha dude, and I don't know how she figures it out, but she's immediately like, oh, they blew up the White Rose, they blew up the anvil, oh, they're hunting Grisha, oh, they're gonna find me.
I think because, like, all the Grisha are aware that something is hunting Grisha.
Really? Do you think?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because in the Red Venko in the, like, beginning of the book, he was like, something's hunting Grisha, it's probably slavers.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, I think all of the Grisha are aware. They just didn't realize it was these winged people.
Yeah. So, they see a winged person come out of the White Rose, and they notice, like, I kind of got lost in this section a little bit. So, like, there are winged people, but then all of a sudden there are other people that come on the scene that are Shu, and they're, like, sniffing around, they're sniffing the air, and then they, like, make eye contact with Jesper and Nina and start heading directly for them. Mm-hmm. So I don't really understand where the winged person disappears to. Like, it was, I'm not gonna lie, this section was a little bit hard to follow.
Yeah, I just assumed they all had wings.
No, they don't, though.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think, like, obviously this is the Shu delegation that showed up.
Yeah.
And they're hunting for Grisha, so, like, you can kind of assume that they have Jurda Parem, and their whole plan is to just find more Grisha and use it on them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, like, how do random people develop the ability to smell Grisha? Yeah. It's weird.
Right. So, like, these people are approaching them, and Jesper, like, obviously sees that they're approaching them, so shoots at them. Mm-hmm. And, Jesper is trying to shoot the one with wings, and Matthias, like, is blasting with whatever he has at the other two that are coming towards them without wings. It was one man and one woman. And, like, they were feeling the shots. Like, he was shooting them, but, like, they just, like, stumbled and then kept coming. Like, it wasn't affecting them at all. Nina was, like, trying to use her Heartrender powers, but, like, it wasn't working on them at all, and, like, we know her powers have sort of been off anyway, so...
Yeah.
Not effective, Nina, I'm sorry. But Wylan saves the day!
No.
I don't know what he used. I assumed at the time it was, like, a firework or something, but I don't think it was. I think he explained it after or something else, but he lit it, and whatever it was is it, like, let purple sparks fly and, like, lights one of the guys on fire. Mm-hmm. And then it creates this, like, huge amount of smoke so that they can run away, hidden. And, like, they're heading down an alley, and they're throwing flash bombs behind them, and, like, trying to hide their tracks. Although I feel like throwing a smoke bomb is a direct way to be like, they're going this way!
Yeah.
Anyway, so, all of a sudden, like, Nina gets caught in this, like, silvery net, and a shoe woman starts, like, to drag her, like, the woman with the metal-y skin, starts to drag her back, like, drag her backwards, and they notice, like, it does look like she has metal under her skin, which is why the bullets aren't affecting her. And so they all grab the net to try and, like, pull Nina towards them, but the shoe woman is, like, really strong, and is, like a tug-of-war, but Nina's the rope.
Yeah. Yeah.
So...
You're not wrong.
No, so Nina's sort of like, well, shit, and, like, she grabs one of Jesper's pistols, and I love it. She's like, just let go.
So much.
And they're like, what? Let go? She's like, yes, let go. I love that she's, like, just done. Like, just let me handle it, guys.
Yeah, basically.
So they let go. Obviously, the shoe woman, who's using a ton of strength to pull, she, like, stumbles backwards from the momentum, does manage to bring Nina close to her. Nina gets, like, all the way as close as she possibly can, and sticks the pistol at Mrs.'s eye and shoots it.
Yeah.
And it takes the Mrs.'s head off.
Yeah.
Which is lovely. So obviously her head is not bulletproof.
Yes. Which is good. Or they'd be screwed.
Yeah. So
Nina would be completely fucked.
Yes. But luckily Nina saves the day. Like, I love how it's the most unassuming ones that save the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not Kaz, it's not Jesper, it's not Matthias. It's little old Wylan and Nina that get them out of the majority of messes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know. I do too. So, Jesper's, like, super freaked out because he's never been, like, chased by his power before. But
yeah, because he did a very good job of hiding it, really.
Well, it's not common knowledge, but
yeah.
I guess because these people can sniff out Grisha, they don't know that he hasn't lived as a Grisha.
Yeah.
So
it's wild.
It is. Anyway, so they do manage to escape. And yeah, they escape. We get back to Inej's point of view. So her and Kaz are, like, running down alleyways. They ditch their costumes. Kaz had, like, a change of clothes waiting. And I'm just like, does he have shit hidden everywhere? Yes. The answer is yes. Yes, he does.
He has to.
Yeah.
There's no other response.
But it's just wild. Like, I just want to be like, I wish I could hide random shit on the street. But it would be gone. Like, somebody would find it. And that would be it. But, whatever. So, after they changed, they, like, sort of took a long route and, like, walked different districts of the city, trying to, like, stay out of, like, to stay in plain view, but also to get, like, out of the busy area of the street. They ended up in the warehouse district, and, like, the clothes they were wearing sort of made them look like boys, like, looking for work, sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. And they found an abandoned factory and broke in, and went up to the 3rd floor, and there were, like, it was, like, a fabric factory that caught fire, so there were, like, bolts of fabric still everywhere. And Kaz, like, found a little tin that he had hiding, and it was, like, some crackers and water and stuff, so it was like food and water, so it was a safe house that they had. One of the safe houses that Vanek wanted her to tell him about that she didn't know about.
Yeah. Imagine.
I know. So she asked them about the others, like, are they okay? And he was like, yeah, they'll be fine, but, like, we'll find out when we meet back at the, I don't know what you call it, their, like, cemetery meeting place.
Yeah, the safe house that's not a house.
Yeah. The safe crypt? Safe crypt.
Good one.
Yeah.
Safe crypt.
Inej was obviously worried about them because she actually cares. Unlike Kaz. She also, like, kept replaying in her head what her and Benek, like, their last interaction together. So, it really impacted her. Mm-hmm. So, she said to him, as he was torturing her and about to break her legs, he'll never trade if you break me. She legit believes that she is just an investment to Kaz. And
well, he has said that to her before.
He has, but he also made a declaration of love to her, like, in the last book.
And then she was like, no.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but you can...
But, like, love doesn't just go away.
Yeah, but they're teenagers. They don't know that.
I guess.
It's also teenage love that could just go away.
You're right. Anyway, so she, like, really does believe she's just an investment to him, and that even though she thought they were more, this whole debacle has made her realize that they are not. Because I guess he took his time rescuing her, and, like, making the trade like that. Like, I don't know, I guess that sort of put something in her head.
Mm-hmm.
So, he asks, like, are you okay? Did he hurt you? And she sort of thinks, she says, like, that she's fine, even though she knows, like, mentally she's not okay, because this has, like, rocked their relationship in her mind. Like, it's opened her eyes to truths she didn't want to face in her eyes. But she thinks he's just asking her if she's okay, so that, like, just to make sure that, his investment's not damaged in any way.
Yeah.
Anyway. He gets up to go, and she's like, where are you going? And he's like, I have some business near the silos, like, I'll be back. Like, just, you'll be safe here. So he goes and does some business, and leaves her there, just to rest. So, that's just nice. He wakes her up later, and they make their way to the crypt, and everybody is there already waiting for her, and they all have, like, this lovely reunion, and they all hug her, and, like, it's all really cute. And then Kaz is like, all right, let's get down to business. We gotta talk about our next heist. And they were like, no! We need to talk about the explosions and the winged people coming for us.
Yeah.
So they tell Kaz and Inej about the shoe and the people with wings. It's not as cool as we thought. The people don't naturally have wings.
Yeah.
They're mechanical wings. So Kuwei obviously is in the crypt, and he tells them, because he is Shu, he tells them that he thinks that these soldiers, these people, are actually members of the Kurgud. It's such a weird name, Kurgud.
Yeah.
So apparently it's a new kind of soldier that the Shu have developed. They had doctors work with fabricators to experiment on soldiers.
Interesting.
Yeah. And Nina's like, oh yeah, Ravka were doing something kind of like that too with First Army volunteers. And, like, Matthias is like, you guys all suck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes. But at the same time, like, Ravka was using volunteers, so at least that's something.
I guess. They probably just didn't want to be fighting, and they were like, I guess we'll do this instead. It's just so...
Yeah.
So shitty. Yeah. All of it.
Anyway, so they talk a little bit about, like, who these soldiers are. So Jesper is, like, really confused because he said doctors working with fabricators, but fabricators deal with inorganic material, right? Metal, glass, like, things like that to help make things. They don't deal with tissues and organs. Like, he said, that seems like something more of what a corporalki could do. Like someone like Nina, who's a heartrender. She deals with organic matter. But Nina explains that a tailor is a cross between a corporalki and a fabricator, which I don't really understand, because of how is that, like, I understand it's like making something the way a fabricator would make something, but with organic. Okay, so I guess I do understand. Never mind.
Because, like, they take, like, when Jenya did it to
Alina, you're right.
Yeah,
I remember.
She, like, took inorganic and made.
Yeah, she would, like, take the color from a flower petal and put it on her lips for the. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she then actually mentions Jenya. So Jenya is more of a main character in Shadow and Bone. And apparently Jenya could have chosen to be a heartrender or a fabricator, but actually chose to be a tailor.
Which is, like, stretching it a tiny bit, I think. Like, Nina wasn't in the Civil War because she was too young.
Right.
So she, I don't think, knows everything about, like, the first trilogy. You know what I mean? Interesting.
Yeah. So she said that this just seems like really advanced tailoring. Like, putting the metal under the skin and the wings and everything like that.
Yeah.
And, like, they actually talk about the wings and say that, like, the wings are an inorganic material. Like, they do look mechanical, but they would still have to graft the wings, like, to the muscles of the body and hollow out the bones to make you lightweight. Like, if you strapped on a pair of wings on one of us, we still wouldn't be able to fly because we're too heavy.
Well, and it's also, like,
humans in general, not just us specifically.
But it kind of ties in with our last book, because if you listen to that one, Feyre had to make her wings, but then she also had to, like, make sure that her muscles attached so that she could use the wings. Because, like, if you just throw wings on your back, you can't flap them. What are you going to flap them with?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's, like, it's crazy, like, the work that you have to do to make it work.
Well, and then too, so, like, bird bones are hollow. Because you have to be light enough to fly.
Yeah.
So, like, they had to think about that. Then they also had to think about how would they replace bone marrow? Like, what would they do for that? If they're hollowing out bones, that means you don't have any bone marrow. And as humans, pretty sure bone marrow is important.
Yeah. No, not bone marrow, but is metal not heavier than squishy shit inside of humans?
But, like, they didn't, so, like, you know that a bird has hollow bones to help it be lightweight. Yes. So I guess was that to, like, counteract? They hollowed out the bones so that the person could fly with the wings.
Yeah, but the person also now has metal in them.
No, that's a different...
Or was that the other person? Okay, sorry.
Those are two different types of soldier.
Okay.
The wing...
That makes more sense, because I was like, but if you're putting metal in them... But...
oh, no, you're right, because the wingy guy got shot, and he was just somersaulting over it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe he just didn't get shot at all.
Maybe. And maybe the metal is lighter than I would think metal would be. Maybe. I don't know how.
I mean, we're talking
about... But, like, if you can make people fly. Yeah, it's...
If you can make people fly, and if you can graft metal beneath their skin, I feel like...
Yes.
I feel like maybe our conversation is a bit moot.
It's true. You have a point.
Anyway, so like they had to hollow out the bones, but then they also had to reinforce the skeleton so that you didn't break just from being alive. Because I feel like if you took out our bone marrow, our bones would snap like twigs.
Makes sense.
So they then said that, like, this sounds super duper complex, so it's probably not a regular fabricator. It's probably a fabricator on Jurda-Parem.
Which then solves all the issues, because I guess if you're a fabricator on Jurda-Parem, you can probably take the weight out of metal somehow.
Yeah, 100%. So, like, they're sort of, like, that was a huge, like, display of, like, that was a huge, I don't know, like, that was a big deal, right? Like, people just came in and blew up a couple of places, like, Nina's like, are the police gonna do anything about it? Like, is the city gonna... And Kaz is like, probably not. The city's probably not gonna do a damn thing, because the shoe people that came in and blew stuff up and kidnapped people, they had no uniform on. So they had no connection to the shoe government. So the shoe government's gonna be like, they're not ours.
Yeah.
So, anyway. So he said that, like, the city's obviously not going to be able to do anything unless they find them and catch these people, but, like, they're not going to do that because they can't even be shot.
Yeah.
So, while Inej had been resting, he actually did some digging around the harbor. Apparently, the Council of Tides, this is hilarious, dry docked the shoe warships in the harbor. So, like, they made an island with the ocean, and now their two ships are just sitting on a spit of land in the middle of nowhere.
It's amazing.
I love it so much. And they think, actually, about maybe asking the Council of Tides to help them, but, like, Nina's like, where are we gonna find them? No one knows who they are. Like, it's impossible. And Jesper then mentions that he thinks, like, maybe this wasn't the first attack. Like, he thinks there were others. He was like, remember I told you guys that a merch ship had been torn apart, and originally everyone had thought, like, obviously everybody on board the ship was dead, and they originally thought that a squalor had busted out of his indenture, but they're like, oh, maybe he was actually taken by these shoe guys. And obviously we are discussing the prologue event with Emil Retvenko. So that's what they're referring to. So Nina is like, I don't want to leave all of these Grisha that are hiding in the city. I don't want to leave them to the shoe to be found, because they are assuming that the shoe are taking all these people and then dosing them up on Jurda-Parem and either using them as the super soldiers or, like, using them to experiment or to, like, make these soldiers and then, like, dying from Jurda-Parem overdose, right? So, they don't want, Nina doesn't, obviously, she doesn't want to see her fellow Grisha used that way. So, like, no one really knows how to help the Grisha, because they feel like the shoe people, like, this is a nation. Like, they can't just, like, how are you going to stop a nation?
As 6 teenagers.
Yes. Yeah.
And a group of Grisha.
Yeah.
Possibly. If there are Grisha left.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. So Jesper's, like, freaking out. He's like, you want to help the Grisha, but, like, they can smell us. Like, they could smell us out and be on their way here. Like, we should, like, get to safety as soon as possible. So Kaz then, of course, that's Kaz's segue to bring up the next job and be like, I have a plan that'll get us to safety. So he asks, so, like, at the end of the last book, they went to Pekka Rollins and got money, right? He sold, Kaz sold him his shares of the Crow Club and the harbor area. So he was like, what do you think I did with that money? And they all had their theories. They were like, guns, weapons, like, I don't know. And he tells them he spent it all buying sugar shares for each of them. Under aliases, of course. And initially you're like, sugar? That's stupid.
Yep, you are.
So they talk about how the sugar crops grow slightly different than the way they exist here. Apparently they only grow in the southern colonies. They only grow like once a year. So there's not going to... So the entire crop has been already harvested and like processed and is now stored. But there won't be another crop for 3 more months.
Mm-hmm.
So Van Eck owns...
Wait, sorry. Do you actually know how sugar, like, is that what you're saying? You're like, sugar that grows here. Are you...
I mean, I don't think sugar is only harvested once a year.
I thought they said every 3 months.
No.
Oh, just once a year. Okay.
Yeah, I think they just said the next crop won't be ready for 3 months.
Oh.
So the entire world's supply of sugar is hanging out in the silos right now.
Yeah. Yes, okay. I understand.
So.
Got confused.
Yeah. So all the sugar that has been processed from the southern colonies is now hanging out in silos that are, like, on the edge of town. Van Eck actually owns 10 of 30 of those silos.
Seems like a lot.
That is a lot of silos. So he owns the silos themselves, but he doesn't own the sugar inside. Merchants who own the sugar pay Van Eck a percentage of their sales to use the silos to store their sugar. But he has to upkeep them. Like, he pays for their upkeep and he pays for the security detail.
Yeah. It's actually, like, a really good way to make money and not do anything.
Yes. Yeah. Well, hey, like, that's Darcy and Bingley's whole, like, career is just being landlords. Yeah. That's why they live such a lavish lifestyle and do nothing.
They just own shit.
Yeah. Yep. So, I love how it always comes back to Pride and Prejudice eventually.
Yeah, eventually. We do get there.
So, Kaz was saying, if they were to destroy Van Eck's silos, destroying then 33% of the sugar that exists, obviously, the cost of sugar would go up because there would not be as much of it. Mm-hmm. And they happen to own shares in sugar that is not stored in Van Eck's silos.
Smart.
So they could then sell their shares at a huge profit. So they're not actually technically getting their money from Van Eck himself. Mm-hmm. They're getting it by profiting off of destroying his business.
Yeah. And it's exactly what happened to Kaz and his brother in the first book. Like, it's kind of, not exactly, but it's kind of what
lied about, Pekka lied.
Pekka did too. Yeah.
Yeah, he lied about sugar shares, right?
Yeah. So, that's why.
Yeah.
It's, like, such a good callback, mm-hmm. and, like, I just love it.
Yeah, me too.
Love it.
So, remember last week, Wylan mentioned a chemical weevil, and we had a discussion about what a weevil was?
Yes,
so,
yes, we did.
Apparently they're going to use a chemical weevil that Wylan made to make it look like an accident. Like, they don't want it to be obvious that they tampered with the sugar. Yeah. But Kaz then adds that while he did use a lot of the money to buy shares for them, he also used half the money to set up an account under Alice Van Eck's name with more sugar shares. He used cash, so buying them is untraceable. Mm-hmm. However, the certificates for the shares are stamped and dated, and they are hanging out in Van Eck's lawyer's safe. Smeet, the guy from last week, with the dogs. Yeah. So when the merchants see that Van Eck bought competitor sugar, and then they find evidence of the chemical weevil, which is destruction of property, they will assume that he did it himself to then profit off of the destruction.
Yeah.
And apparently, like, not apparently, it would be a huge blow to his reputation, and the thought is that he would be arrested, and all of his assets would be seized to, like, recoup the market, to, like, give back to the market. Apparently, it's one of, like, the worst crimes in Kerch/Ketterdam is to, like, tamper with the market. Like, they think very highly of, like, of merchants and, like, business stuff like that. Like,
well, it's the merchant council, so you can already tell they, like, think highly of it, because they, like, that's what they care about.
Right. So, like, apparently he could hang for it and everything. Like, that's the penalty, is death. Mm-hmm. But they don't think he'll actually hang.
Because Wylan's a bit like, what?
Yeah.
I don't want him to die.
Not yet he does.
No.
Anyway, so the problem lies in, so, like, everybody's, like, super jazzed about this plan, but they're super jazzed. So the problem lies now in how to get into the silos. Kaz has said, I cannot pick the locks. Everyone's like, what? You can't pick the locks? There's not a lock you can't pick. And he's like, I can't pick this lock. Apparently each silo it's like a quadrilock. You have to, like, put key in 4 separate locks and turn them all at once. So he can't do that. He can't do 4 locks at once.
He doesn't have 4 hands.
No. So the other idea is for Inej to climb the silo and put the weevil in the top, because silos do have an opening in the top. And everyone's like, there's no way she can climb up and down 10 silos in one night. And he's like, no. But you can climb on top of one and then tightrope walk to the rest, which I also don't understand. How are they setting up the tightropes?
I don't remember. I didn't read that far ahead.
Great.
Actually, I think part of it is in my week.
Oh.
We'll get there.
Anyway, so like, everyone's like, oh yeah, and I suppose there's not going to be a net, because that'd be too obvious, especially since there's going to be, like, guards around. And Kaz is like, no, she'll have a net. And it's just like, I don't need a net. And he's like, there will be a net. No options.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's just like he loves her.
He cares.
He doesn't want her to get hurt.
He doesn't want her to die.
So he wants to, like, go in 24 hours. He wants to strike while the iron is hot. He wants to, like, get going ASAP. But everyone else is like, Inej needs to rest. She's the one that's doing the majority of the work in this plan. Like, she should rest for a while. She's just been held captive for a week.
Yeah. And she's super weak because she wasn't eating.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. But Inej is like, no, I can do it. So Nina like, I guess Kaz has a role for everybody already, but Nina's like, if you want my help, you have to help me get the remaining Grisha out of the city. And he's like, okay, fine. I don't need you. Goodbye. Like, he's completely prepared to let her walk away. But then Inej is like, no, thank you. I will not help you unless you help Nina.
Yeah. One thing that he does do, though, he's like, okay, when we get the money, I'll give you your share because you did do the ice core job to Nina. And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I was like, why don't you just walk away and wait till they get the money?
Yes! Anyway, but I guess they're honorable thieves.
Yeah, I was impressed by that. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
So Inej essentially says, like, I'm not going to help unless you figure out a plan for these Grisha to help get them out. Mm-hmm. So the plan is for that. They make a plan for that super quickly, actually. I'm really surprised they didn't have to think about it a little bit more.
Well, yeah, Kaz was just like, we'll do this.
Yeah.
And they're like, why didn't you just do this in the first place? Like,
yeah. So Nina has the task of getting a message to all the remaining Grisha in the city. She thinks there's only like 30, so it's not that many. And the plan is to get them on a boat with a forged manifest. They have a guy in their gang that is really good at forging documents. The issue that they have is that Van Eck is going to be watching the harbor, so they plan to use one of his own merchant boats because obviously he's not going to be searching his own boat.
Yeah, and I think that's what they said last week, because Kaz was talking to Kuwei, and he was like, you can't leave, because he's searching all the boats.
Yeah. So they plan to steal one of Van Eck's own boats, and they're going to forge a letter to the captain with instructions to get these quote-unquote political refugees to Ravka. And they're gonna they're like, don't tell anybody about it. Like, we'll pay you handsomely to do this. But this also means that if they're writing a letter from Van Eck, they need Van Eck's official seal. Otherwise, it can't come from him.
Yeah.
And apparently he keeps his seal in his safe. And his safe is impossible to crack.
Of course it is.
Yeah. Wylan has an idea, though, to create this, like, acidic compound that's, like, really, really volatile, that can eat through the safe in a matter of a couple of minutes. And he's like, if it's okay if he notices, like, because once he's obviously going to see the hole, and he's going to know what's gone, so he's going to know what we're up to. But, like, as long as that's okay, I can make this chemical compound. And he's like, but the ingredients are hard to get. Like, you gotta go north to, a mine, like, some place to get one, and then another one you gotta go somewhere else, and so, like, the instructions are a bit tricky, or the ingredients are a bit tricky, sorry. But Kaz is like, yeah, we can get those, that's fine, and, it sounds like a plan, let's do it. So, we've got ourselves another heist. So, skip now to Kaz's POV. So, everybody is sleeping, and he is still up. He can't sleep. And he says, like, he probably won't sleep until this is over. And he's worried that Van Eck will find out about the shoe hunting the Grisha, and then try and collect the Grisha for himself. Which is a valid concern, and, I think he should be worried. Yeah.
And I think he's kind of like, oh, it's probably a good idea we're getting them out of here. Yeah. Good job, us.
So he's, like, staying up trying to figure out details, probably trying to figure out his, like, plan B, C, D, and E, like he always has. Inej, obviously, is also not asleep, and she approaches him and asks, like, why did you insist on the net? Because, I forgot to mention that now that they have this additional plan to rescue the Grisha, the net that they were going to use for Inej, they needed 3 people to wield it. I guess they were going to, like, hold it underneath her as she walked, sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And now that they have this additional task, they can't, now they're spread a bit more thinly, so really only Nina is going to be able to go to the silo with Inej. She cannot handle the net by herself, so there's not going to be a net. Yeah. So he fought for the net that he's still not getting.
Yeah. Yeah. And Inej is fine with it, because I think, like, she used to be a tightrope walker before she was taken. Yes. And she, like, hasn't had a net in ages. Yeah. So
since she was like 4.
Yeah.
Anyway, so his response after she asked him, like, why were you insisting on the net? His response, and it was a terrible response, was that he went to a lot of trouble to get his spider back. And he didn't want her to break her neck the next day. Like, if he went to so much trouble to get her back.
Yeah.
Ugh. And she sort of insinuates to him, I get it, you're protecting your investments. And this sort of, like, it resigns her to the fact that, like, no, he really does just think of her in that one way.
Yeah.
And so, like, she's resigned, but then she adds to him, like, you know, we should probably have eyes on Vanek's house, see what extra security he's got now that they've, like, broken in and taken his wife. So she's like, somebody should go, and he's like, I can get someone on it, and she's like, I already know the layout of the house. You know that I'm the best person to go do this. So Kaz, like, thinks to himself that he wants to tell her, like, no, she needs to rest, but he doesn't. He says, okay. Like, he just goes along with it.
I love that about this book, that whenever you get Kaz's point of view, he's just like a lovesick little puppy, but everyone else's point of view of Kaz is like, he's so scary and menacing, and he doesn't care about anyone, and then you get into his head, and he's like, I love Inej. Yeah. Inej doesn't love me right now, but maybe one day.
That's true. He's just like, what he says and what he thinks and what he says are two completely different things. It's like, it literally is almost like two different people.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they both get in a boat to travel to the barrel. Kaz has to go see Per Haskell, who is the leader of his gang. And they intercept him on the way to play cards. It's not like an official meeting. And he is pissed because he has his Heartrender, aka Nina, his Spider, aka Inej, his best shooter. Like, he's using all of his best guys and himself. Yeah. So, like, he wants everyone to come back. He's getting annoyed.
Yeah.
But they convince him to let them have a couple of more days. But he says, fine, you can have a couple more days, but I need Inej back. Like, 100%. Give her back.
Yeah.
And Kaz is like, I can't. She's really important to this mission. And he's like, I don't care. I'm, like, if you look at her contract, whose name is at the top as her owner, it's me, not you. So, like, if I want her back, I get her back. And Kaz just, like, sort of is like, okay, tell her that. And then all of a sudden, she's just not there anymore. So she, like, ran away. And he's like, get her to come back. And he was like, I don't know where she went. Yeah. And it's like, dude, like, I will say, this Per Haskell guy has a lot more patience, I think, than he gets credit for.
Yeah,
he gives them a lot of leeway.
Yeah. I think this scene actually happens in the show, too. I think it was the first episode of season 2. I think.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and they had this conversation, and Inej, like, went away, and then he was like, I'll tell her next time I see her.
Yeah. Anyway, so, like, he obviously is like, I own her, boy. And he's like, no, she owns herself. And so Per Haskell's, like, obviously really annoyed, but he was like, get me my money. And then he just leaves. So obviously Inej, like, comes back, like, minutes later, and they get back in the boat and head to Vanek's house. And Kaz, like, they don't really say anything, but he just insists on going with her. And he's thinking in his head, like, he knows that it would be easy for her to just climb up. They have to go to this cathedral, which is nearby, and they climb to the top. They're going to climb to the top of it to get a look at his house. And they say that, like, he knows that Inej could very quickly and easily climb the outside of the cathedral and, like, get to the roof that way. But because he's going with her, they break into the inside and, like, climb up all the stairs and then hoist themselves onto the roof and then walk up the roof. And, like, so like, he's exhausted and, like, his leg is apparently killing him, but he's still, like, going with her, even though he knows it would be easier for her to go alone. But she also doesn't say anything either. Like, she's like, oh, he's coming? Okay, let's go this way, the way that he can go. Yeah. So, they get to the roof, and then she sort of says to him, like, he's like, oh, well, we need to get closer. And she's like, yeah, how are you gonna do that, dude? Like, I can do this by myself. And so, like, she just, like, jumps off the roof and leaves him alone. And he's like, well, shit. So he goes back to the boat and, like, waits for her, and he keeps thinking about her and worrying about her, and he says he doesn't like it. Yeah. Like, he says that, like, she's a distraction, which she is.
Mm-hmm.
And he sort of, like, can't wait to get the money, because the sooner she gets her money, the sooner she goes, buys herself a boat, catches slavers. So, he almost wants her to leave, because he's so in love with her that, like, he can't think straight when she's around. And he's annoyed that he can't think straight. Which is adorable.
It's so cute, and I love it so much.
So like, she comes back, like, no, she was, like, gone for, like, 20 minutes, and she's back, and she's like, I have all the information we need. So she says that she checked out the house, and she also found out that he is having, Van Eck is having, like, a dinner meeting, a working dinner, with, the Merchant Council at his house tomorrow. So they were like, this is a good distraction. He asks about Van Eck then, and it's like, I asked you earlier if he hurt you. Did he hurt you? Tell me the truth now. Like, don't lie now. Mm-hmm. And she was like, he really didn't hurt me, but then she said, like, he was threatening to, she told him what he threatened to do, to break her legs, so that they would shatter and not work anymore. And she told him that she was nervous he wouldn't have come for her. And she asked if he would have still come if she had been broken. And this is the cutest thing ever. He responds by saying that he would. And that even if he couldn't walk, he would crawl to her. And if they were broken, they would just fight their way out together, because that's what they do. And it's just so cute!
I like my heart.
Yeah.
They're
love it. They're so cute.
I love how in love he is.
Yeah. I know, it's adorable.
But it's just funny because he's always like, I'm not gonna say any more nice things. I'm not gonna, like, blah, blah, blah. And then he says something like this, which is, like, earth-shattering. And you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
He's so in love.
I know, it's adorable. But yeah, so that's the end of their, like, we leave them now. And then we go to Nina. And she wakes up thinking of Perem. Mm-hmm. She's having an addiction issue. She worries that the Perem has, like, dimmed the spark in her, and that she'll never recover. But she also says that, like, she feels better when she has a purpose, like a mission, when she has something else to think about. So her and Matthias, obviously, like, again, she has to deliver the message secretly to all the Grisha, like, people of where to meet them and whatever, and that there's going to be a ship heading to Ravka, whatever. So the plan is for them to go and do that. So her and Matthias, the plan is for them to dress up as Fjerdan defectors who are seeking asylum at the Ravkan embassy, in order to get at the Grisha. But, like, Nina's a little annoyed because the papers say that they're siblings. And she's like, he looks at me like I'm something to eat. He can't look at me that way and have people believe that we're siblings. Like, it's adorable.
It's so cute.
So they head into what they call Little Ravka, which I love. Like, I love there's a Little Ravka in Ketterdam. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And she says, like, it makes her happy. It reminds her of home. So, like, they're passing these, like, little stalls. And there are all these, like, little vendors that are selling, saint bones. And, like, we don't sell them in the real world, but, like, you can absolutely go to a church and there are the bones of a saint in that church.
Yeah.
Like, that's a real thing. So, these people are selling saint bones. Now Nina's like, they're not actually saint bones. They definitely, like, just dug up random bones and are selling them as saint bones, but still. So
I think, was this not in the first? No, sorry. So we did Shadow and Bone, then I listened to the next book, but it's in the second book in that series. They're going through like a town and someone's yelling out that they have Sancta Alina's bones, and she's like, I'm right here. They can't have my bones.
Yeah. So like obviously it's a bit of a swindle, but but yeah, so like Matthias is like really grossed out at the idea of these bones being sold, and she just is making fun of him, being like, you pray to a big tree. So yeah, he also doesn't understand how like how they accept the Grisha as saints. Like, for example, Sancta Alina. Like, he thinks it's weird that they revere Grisha to sainthood.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, come on, dude.
But it's the same thing that, like, humans have done, I guess, too.
100%. Yeah.
So, it's like, it's just the way the world works, man.
But again, they pray to giant tree.
Yeah.
So they find a peddler selling Alina, like, statues, and Nina relays, like, the secret phrase, and he says, oh, yeah, there's this tavern, like, go in, sit at the second table, the waitress will take your order, like, it's a specific little code. So they go in, they sit at the table, and all of a sudden the door slams shut, and everybody that's in there have guns pointed at them. And then, like, a heartrender approaches them and, like, tries to knock Nina out. So, like, she was like, shit, it's a trap! And, like, Matthias drops, like, this haze bomb so that the heartrender can't see them, so therefore can't touch them, therefore can't, heartrend them.
Stop their hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, Nina is trying to use her power, but she says, like, she can't feel anybody else's. Like, normally, as a heartrender, she can feel the pulses of everyone else in the room. Like, she can feel their life force. But she can't feel that right now. All she can feel is, like, this cold, like, this coldness, different sort of a power that, in the back of her head, that she felt when she was suffocating that guy with sand. So she grabbed for that instead, I guess, like, just desperate for anything. And she then breaks the windows and uses, I guess her power had called on the saint bones that were outside and started using them as shrapnel, like, attacking all the people with guns pointed at them. And she's like, oh shit, like, this is different. But then
this is new.
But then all of a sudden, her and Matthias are lifted into the air and pinned to the ceiling, and Zoya walks in, who is Nina's buddy and teacher.
Yeah, and like I think her commander even or something. But yeah, it's like, what? She was in the other books.
But again, you wouldn't know if you didn't read them.
Yeah. So this is kind of like I like, it's weird because in a lot of books I don't like changing points of views, but in this book I really like it.
Yes.
And I really care about everybody, but I'm also like, they're on the fucking ceiling and we're just leaving to go see somebody else.
We're just leaving them there. Have fun, bye.
Yeah, basically.
But at the same time, this next chapter is also like a huge, like, what?
This chapter is giant, for one. It's like the longest chapter ever, but it's like so much happens.
Yeah, I'm so happy about it.
It was a real shocker the first time I read it. I was not expecting this. And then reading back, I was like, oh, there are clues. Anyway, so we jump over to Wylan's point of view. Jesper and Wylan are currently on a boat, and they're on their way to Olendal to get the second ingredient that Wylan needs to make this bomb for the safe that him and Kaz are going to use on his dad's safe. Wylan is like adamant that he is going to see his mother's grave because it's on this island. The Church of St. Hild is also on this island. So while he's over there, he's like, I'm going to go visit her gravesite. And Kaz was like, you can only do that if you have time. Like, the priority is to go to the quarry and get this ingredient. And if you're not back by nightfall, don't come back at all. And you're just like, damn, son, you're being an ass. Also, you need them. But what are you going to do without...
Well, that's true. But at the same time, Wylan is also like, listen, we might have to, like, flee the country in a couple of days. Like, I can't leave without seeing her grave once.
Exactly, yeah. They kind of just have a little conversation on their way where Wylan asks Jesper where Kaz gets all of his clothes, and Jesper explains that they're just costumes, and apparently, like, he has a backdoor entry to, like,
the opera house.
Yeah, so then he just, like, grabs clothes from there, so I guess, like, that's why he has outfits for everything, which is just, he's just a smart boy. Smart boy. Wylan then thanks Jesper for coming with him, and Jesper is just like, I owed you, you came with me to go see his dad. And he also thanks him for, like, lying to him in the, like, worst lie ever that they all had last week. And Wylan just says he didn't want Jesper's father to look at Jesper the way that Wylan's father looks at him. Aww. So that's why he lied, and it's just so sad. Like, his father is such an asshole. Yeah. Like, obviously we know that. But just, like, the way he's made Wylan feel so shitty about himself is awful. Yeah. Wylan talks about his mother a bit, and he talks about, like, she apparently has beautiful red curls, and Jesper just makes a comment that, like, Wylan used to have those too when he looked like himself. His hair was apparently red and curly.
I really hope that they managed to make him look the same.
Right? I know.
And I know you're not going to tell me, but I wish you would.
I know, I'm not. And onward and upward. So Wylan then says that one day she was just sick and going to the country to, like, help her lungs, basically. And then she was just gone. And they never talked about her again. So, like, his father wouldn't even let him talk about her in the house. He was, like, 8 years old at the time. So it's just, ugh. So, I guess shortly before his mother was sent away was when his father realized that Wylan actually couldn't read. But he was good at masking it before because he just memorized, like, books that people read to him, and then he would read them back, and, like, he knew when to turn the page. Like, he has a really good memory. He said he would put the words to music, and that's how he memorizes things. So that's interesting. Just a note. Wylan starts thinking about when he actually left his father's house. Because, like, obviously in the last book, we don't really know why he left his house other than his father is kind of a dick. But we don't know any of the story around it. So he says he thinks it was about 6 months ago. His father said that he secured him a spot at a music school in Bellent. Mm-hmm. And he said he's sending him there until people forget he had a son. Yeah. Which is awful. But that's also why his stepmother thought that he was at a music school, because that's what the father said. So
yeah, like, got him, like, a teaching gig almost.
Yeah. So, and, like, he's really good at flute, I think, is the main thing that he does. So Wylan is actually excited because he's excited to get away from his father and, like, not be a disappointment and, like, actually do something. Yeah. Which makes sense. It's, like, a great opportunity. And Wylan kind of thinks about, like, his father wasn't always a bad man or, like, evil or, like, any of that. Like, he used to be happy with Wylan's mother, and he is, like, happy and a good, not good person, but, like, nice, I guess, to Alice. Kind of like you said when when he was asking Alice about the baby name, and they kind of had a bit of banter, and you were like, they seem like they like each other.
Yeah. Like, he doesn't seem like a complete asshole.
Yeah.
Which, you know, bonus.
Exactly.
If you're married to him.
Yeah. Would not want to be. Wylan also thinks, like, when he was younger and his dad didn't realize that he couldn't read, like, he was nice to him then too, because he thought that he would grow up and kind of be his heir. But by the time he was 8, his dad just gave up on him and was just done with him. Which is just sad. Like, he lost his mother and his father gave up on him, like, all in the same time frame. When Wylan says goodbye to Alice, though, she tells him that she's pregnant. And he kind of has the realization that this is why his father is, like, pushing him out. Because he's going to groom this child into being the heir he always wanted. And as he's leaving, his father doesn't even come out to say goodbye to him, which is devastating. Wylan and 2 men end up getting on a boat to get to Belent, and at one point Wylan's looking over the railing, and the 2 men come up behind him, and one of them, whose name is Pryor, like, chokes him and, like, picks him up by the throat and has him against the railing. Mm-hmm. And that's when Wylan is like, oh shit, I never was going to Belent. This was all a lie, and my dad just wanted to kill me. So
I just, like, he says something right before he tells this story. Like, he's not telling Jesper this story. He's just thinking about it. It blows my mind that he actually still, like, he thinks this is shameful on his behalf.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, he still thinks, like, shit, I can't tell Jesper and the crew how I really ended up in the barrel. Yeah. And I'm like, your dad tried to kill you. That is in no way your fault. And then you still managed to, like, make somewhat of a name for yourself as an explosive expert. And, like, you still managed to survive. You weren't, like, you showed up in the barrel with literally nothing.
Yeah.
So, and I know you're not done the story yet, but, like,
no.
It blows my mind that he was ashamed of how he got to the barrel. Like, they all thought he ran away.
Yeah, but I can kind of see where the shame is coming from. It's like any abusive relationship. You don't want to say, I didn't have, like, and I don't believe this is true, but, like, when you're in that kind of relationship, you think you didn't have the strength to get out. And that is absolutely not how I feel about any abusive relationships. Like,
no,
obviously. But I feel like that's kind of how he felt, because he's like, I'd rather them think that I ran away, because then I'm the one that was controlling it. I don't have to say, oh, my dad tried to kill me, and I thought that he was sending me to a nice school, and, like, you know, I think that's where the shame is. I don't think it's, I agree with you. I don't think it's right. And, like, if Kaz knew this, I don't think that this would have happened the same way. Because if Kaz knew this story, I think he would have just been like, you should just hate your father enough to fuck him over anyway. He tried to kill you. But
yeah,
Wylan he really hates himself. Mostly because of his father, which is sad. So yeah, he's being choked out, and black spots are filling his vision, and then a stranger yells out, and he's like, what the fuck is going on? And the 2 men say that they caught Wylan going through other passengers' luggage, and he, like, the guy kind of lets up off of his throat a tiny bit, so he, like, pushes him away and then just jumps out of the boat and starts swimming. And he hears someone get in behind him, but he, like, dives underneath a wharf and then ends up on the other side, and then, like, gets off on a bridge and, like, just walks around until he gets to the barrel, and he says that's where he disappeared until his father's letters started to come. So his dad obviously realized that he was alive and started sending him letters. But I can't imagine, and I know he can't read the letters, but I can't imagine, like, trying to kill your son and then being like, I'm going to send him some letters now that I know he can't read.
But, like, I wonder if he was sending them as some sort of reminder, like,
I know where you are. Like,
yeah,
stay away.
like,
yeah.
Yeah, stay in the barrel, like, stay on your side of the tracks, and we won't have a problem. But, like, again, I know where you are. I can send men after you.
Yeah, because I think the letters even, like, I guess Inej read them, but the letters were like, if you're reading this, I want you back home. Because it was, like, a whole play on it, so.
Yeah.
Ugh. So, they end up getting to their stop, and as they're, like, walking after they get off the boat, Jesper helps Wylan pick flowers for his mother's grave. And then Jesper is like, oh, we need to get a ride to the quarry. But Wylan just says, like, the ingredient that he told Kaz he needed from a quarry is actually at any general store. So he lied to Kaz about that just so that he could get here to see his mother's grave. They do pick it up first, which I do appreciate. Because, like, if they came back without it, I think I think Kaz might have been pissed. A friendly man ends up driving them up to near the church. And he offers them some work, but they just say that they have some work up near this church of Saint Hilda. They had clothes on that basically made it look like they were looking for work or they were going to work somewhere. But once they get near the church, they take off the, like, jacket they had on, and underneath they're wearing suits. And Kaz told them, like, what they should do. They should go to St. Hilda and tell them that they were sent by Smeat to make sure that the grave is well maintained and all of that. Wylan asks Jesper if he remembers his mother, and he says that she taught him how to shoot, which is just, like, I think we know by this point that his mother was Grisha, but it's just interesting that, like, something that he loves so much came from his mother, and it's like how he uses Grisha magic too, and it came from her. Yeah, so it's kind of cool.
There's something that he says here, and maybe I'll bring it up after.
Cool.
Sorry.
So, that's okay. So they see the graveyard, and Wylan kind of starts to doubt himself. He wonders why he's even there, because he's like, what good would seeing her grave do? He can't even read. And it's just heartbreaking that, like, he feels so useless, and it just makes me so sad.
Do we think he's just, like, dyslexic?
I think so. Like, if you look anything up, that's what it's like. That's what... Yeah. But, like, I know it makes it harder to read, and, like, I don't know exactly, but I'm thinking, like, if he had somebody who knew anything about dyslexia try to teach him, and, like, obviously his schooling kind of stopped after he was 8 and couldn't read, but, like, that's not even that old.
Yeah, it just, like, I've had kids that, and I know dyslexia, like, everybody's presents a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, I've had kids with reading, learning disabilities before. And, like, I don't know, I guess it's a difference of, like, what you know versus, you know, I guess this is supposed to be sort of a, you know, not so civilized, you know, not so modern world.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe they just don't have the tools. But, like, there are so many tools that you could use. And, like, again, with the whole music thing, that would have been a huge asset. Like, so, like, he's dyslexic, but, like, he can still read sheet music.
Yeah.
So, like, there's, I don't know, I feel like him saying he can't read and, like, he's useless, like, I'm sure he can if he worked at it, he would be able to recognize some things.
Yes, but I think, like, after he was 8, he just stopped trying and nobody was there to help him. Like, it's not like they had formal schooling or anything. And once his dad was like, oh, you can't figure this out, I'm, like, writing you off, basically. So I don't think, Like, I think if he had somebody help him who was actually patient and, like, a decent person, maybe he could figure it out.
Yeah.
And, like, somebody who understood, like, what was happening. Because I feel like he even says that, like, the words jumble up when he tries to read them. But if he said that to probably one of his tutors, they'd be like...
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like they'd be able to figure it out.
Yeah, so but then I don't know. If they stop teaching him when he's 8, like, he might not even have been able to express, like, what was happening, really. If he doesn't realize that it's different than what everybody else sees, then...
Yeah.
Maybe he thinks that everybody can just read the words while they're jumbling. And then... Yeah. Anyway, super sad. I feel really bad for him. And I'm like... He's so clever and he's so smart in so many other ways, and it's just his dad really did a number on him. So they get there and they do what Kaz said and say that they're there to see his mother, basically, to make sure that everything's well maintained, blah blah blah. They say that it's like a new protocol, and she says she'll take them to her, and she turns away from the graveyard and walks towards the building. And they're like, what the fuck is going on? When they get inside the building, the woman gets them a file, and it has his mother's name on it, Maria Hendricks, and tells them to have a look while they get her cleaned up. And Wylan is kind of starting to understand what's going on, but he's still, like, on shore, because obviously he spent half of his life
thinking his mother had died.
Yeah. So Jesper is looking through the file folder, and he tells Wylan that his mother is alive. So his father had... Dun, dun. I know. It's like, I didn't expect it at all.
No, at all.
I don't know why. It just didn't even come to my brain.
Well,
there's so much other stuff going on, I guess.
And so many of their parents are dead that you just sort of like, yeah, okay, you take it on faith.
It's like a Disney.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All their parents are dead.
Yeah. Yeah. So his father had her declared insane and had her committed for hysteria, paranoia, and persecution disorder. And he used that as grounds for divorce, and to also take all of her assets for himself until she was declared stable enough to, like, reclaim them, basically. So that's awful.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least. The nurse comes back and says that she's ready for them, and quite docile today. And Wylan is not okay, obviously. But Jesper just says that he's faint from the sun because he's, like, just sitting down and, like, in shock. He does decide that he needs to see her, though, obviously, which is good. They go to meet her in a sunroom, and his mother is painting, and it reminds him of his childhood, because she used to always paint when he was a kid. So she is slumped in a wheelchair, and Wylan thinks she looks too old to be his mother, which is, like, obviously he's picturing her from probably... I'm assuming he's 16, so probably 8 years ago.
I think it's really funny, too, because he was like, that's too old to be my mother, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Like, he was, like, relieved that it wasn't his mother at first.
Yeah. He's like, I'm glad she's dead. Not actually, but it's kind of what it sounds like. So
well, I guess when you accept that she's alive, then you have to accept, like, he has to accept, like, what his father had done, right?
Yeah. And it's kind of like he blames himself for what his father did to him. So obviously he's not going to blame his mother for what his father did to her. So then he has to reorganize how he thinks of his father. And that's kind of exactly what happens in this chapter.
Yeah.
Not to jump too far ahead. But yeah. She ends up looking up at him, and he says her eyes are unmistakable, and obviously it's his mother. Jesper then asks the nurse to take him to see the facilities because he wants to give Wylan some time to talk to his mother. They kind of talk a little bit, but, like, it is pretty awkward. Like, Wylan's like, I thought you were dead. You're my mother. I don't look like myself. Like, what really can he say? So he plays her the flute. He brought it with him because he wanted to play it at her grave. But now he, like, plays it for her. And he plays her mostly cheerful songs. And she enjoys the music. So they have a nice moment there. And then he asks what they did to her. And she reaches forward and asks him what they did to him. And he doesn't know if she's just repeating what he said or, like, if it's something more. Like, I don't know. And I think it's kind of vague, but I think it's kind of like, could she recognize that it was her son even though it's not his face? And I don't know, but it makes it even more heartbreaking, really. Jesper comes back, and then they leave, and the nurse tells Maria Hendricks to say goodbye, but she whispers Van Eck, and Wylan hears it, and is just kind of, like, processing it. And, like,
yeah, it feels like I wonder what they do to her. Like,
yeah.
Because, I don't for a second believe that she was, like, losing her marbles, and then Jan Van Eck put her in this mental institution for the good of her health.
Yeah. Oh my god, obviously not.
I fully believe that she was of completely sound mind, and they put her in that institution. Yeah. So, like, what have they done to her to, like, have they done something to render her less
lucid?
Yes. Less lucid.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if they're, like
I almost
or something. Yeah.
Or, like, electrothoc. Oh my god. Electrothoc.
Therapy?
Shock therapy. Like, I feel like it's something like that to, like, make her go, like, make her a little less sound of mind. But to me, that Van Eck comment, her saying Van Eck, is like, it's almost like a, you haven't broken me yet.
Yeah. And Wylan kind of gets into it when he talks about it after and what he thinks it means. But, like, I hope, it's terrible, but, like, I kind of hope that it's some type of drug that they're giving her. Something that, like, if they stop it, she'll be able to recover. Like, I hope it's not, like, something that they permanently did to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do know what you mean.
Yeah. But then I guess, like, he had her admitted because of, like, paranoia, too. And you're like, she should be paranoid because you're clearly doing something to her. So, like, even if she's barely showing symptoms of the other things that she was committed for, then, like, paranoia, yeah, because he fucking put her in here and took all of her shit.
Yeah.
So.
Literally, that is the worst thing in the world, is that, so not only did he, like, essentially abduct her and force her into a mental institution and, like, make her not able to, like, raise her own child, but then divorces her and steals all of her assets that she came into the marriage with. It's wild.
Yeah. And, like, it's just so shitty, but Wylan obviously needs to hear it. So as they're leaving, the nurse shows them a closet full of her paintings, and the nurse is like, this is only 6 months worth. We have to throw them out all the time because we can't, like, we don't have enough space for all of them. And every photo is like a landscape, but they all have a little boy in it with ruddy curls and bright blue eyes. So it's Wylan. So she is painting Wylan in every single picture that she draws. Which, like, that part actually almost made me cry a bit, because I'm like, that is just devastating.
Yeah.
She loves him so much. Obviously, it's her son, but, like, it's just so sad, because he hates himself. His father hates him. And there's somebody in the world who thinks about him every day, and he's kept from her.
Yeah.
It's so sad. Jesper then helps Wylan leave, and they're like halfway back. They're walking back to the boat, and Wylan finally speaks, and he says that she knows they did this to her. And he tells Jesper that she said Van Eck because that's her last name. Like, the nurse called her Maria Hendricks, and she said Van Eck as in, like, it's not Hendricks, it's Van Eck. And they stole her money and her life. And Wylan just sits in the road, and he admits that his father is actually evil. And then he cries. And Jesper tries to comfort him. Are you going to say something?
No, I'm just upset at the whole, like, I'm just sighing in general at the whole situation. I just feel so bad for Wylan, because he takes all of the guilt on himself, and it's not on him.
Exactly. He literally, at this exact moment, tells Jesper that he is the reason she's there. Like, if he could read, his father wouldn't have sent her away. He just wanted a better son, so he got rid of the mother, which is just wild. Jesper then tells him, like, his father could have done so many other things when he realized that Wylan couldn't read, and then he tells him that he's a genius, which is, like, we've been saying all along. Like, he's so smart at everything else he does. And then he tells Wylan, and this part is just kind of funny, that if he ever calls himself a moron again, he'll tell Matthias that Wylan tried to kiss Nina. And Wylan's like, Matthias would never believe that. And then he says, well, he'll tell Nina that Wylan tried to kiss Matthias. And I'm like, that would probably work. Nina would probably get mad.
Well, and it just, like, it brings forward images of Wylan being this super flamboyant, very obvious, like, gay boy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah, I love it. Jesper also goes on to say, like, it's not, this whole situation, like, obviously, isn't normal. And it is also not Wylan's fault. Wylan just kind of responds like, that might be true, but it doesn't make him feel any better. So Jesper says, how about this? Kaz is going to tear your father's damn life apart. And that does help him more. And he realizes that after Kaz, like, and this whole job happens, he'll be rich and he can take his mother away from here. And then he's, like, suddenly eager to help and, like, doesn't care so much about how far his father is going to fall. We jump over to Matthias's point of view, and he and Nina are still on the ceiling. So Zoya brings them down because I guess she recognizes Nina, and they all kind of leave together with the armed men. Matthias is kind of confused by, like, all the flying bones that we saw in the last chapter.
Yes.
Last moment with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her bony fragments.
Yeah, all the saints' bones. And he wonders if Nina was the one that controlled them, because that's, like, not something she could do before. But they can't really talk about it, because they are being brought to a kind of like a half basement hideout. So apparently none of the houses in Ketterdam have basements. So, like, the embassy has, like, a half basement in the foundation. So nobody would expect it to be there, and it's a good place to hide people.
Yes.
So there's, like, a group of Grisha hidden there, and that's where they go back to talk. Zoya obviously tries to have Matthias handcuffed, but Nina refuses. She also, like, switches back to Kirch so that he can understand what they're saying. And Zoya tells Nina that she is disobeying a direct order, and she is still a part of the Second Army. And Nina's just like, you can chain me up too. Like, we're not chaining up Matthias. Then Jenya shows up, and Matthias kind of feels triggered to fight because he's like, he knows these Grisha from reputation. He's heard about them. Like, Zoya and Jenya are revered Grisha and famed, and like he's been taught that they are his enemy, so it's much different than just meeting a no-name Grisha and Nina that he like fell for. It's like he was raised and taught to want to fight Zoya and Genya, so it's a weird situation for him. Zoya and Genya are like, the last time they saw Nina, she was running off after an argument, and they had heard that Fjordans were in the area, and they assumed the worst. And Nina says the worst happened, but now she actually came here because she wants to help the Grisha that are stuck in Ketterdam. Zoya kind of tries to like tell her that she has no idea how to help, and then she's kind of like explaining that there's a drug that she wouldn't even understand. And Nina's like, has to tell her that like she's experienced it herself. And Zoya says that she isn't surprised and acts like a complete bitch about it. Like it's a bit much, I think.
Yeah, but I guess she's still thinking of Nina as like a child.
Yeah.
I feel
and
like.
And impulsive and like.
Yeah, and like,
yeah.
Look what happened to you when you disobeyed me. You were kidnapped and you've been gone for a year.
Mm-hmm. And you took this drug. Like, Matthias ends up, like, cutting in and being like, she saved all of our lives, so, like, you need to back off. So, like you just said, Nina's been missing over a year. She attacked them with bone shards. They don't really trust her, but Genya's open to listen to what she has to say. Matthias actually turns to her and tells her in Fjordan that she's not the girl she was when she left, and to remember what they came for, like to stand her ground kind of thing, and it does help her. Nina explains that she was captured by Fjordans and Matthias saved her, and then he was captured by the Kirch and she saved him, and then she was captured by Jarl Broom and he saved her. So they're like, it was literally, that is all she said. She didn't go into any detail. She just said that. And Matthias is just thinking, shit, we both have been captured quite a bit.
Like, almost the entire time.
This is a bit fucked up.
I do like, though, that she didn't, like, go into the story of, he's the one who captured me the first time.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I don't think that would have gone well.
No, it would not have gone over well at all.
Yeah.
Remind me who Jarl Broom is.
So Jarl Broom is the, like, captain of the Druskella. So he's the one that mentored Matthias when he was being raised, and like he's the one that captured Nina in Six of Crows and like threatened to give her the Parem, and she
but he's alive still.
Yes, yeah. She was gonna kill him, and then Matthias was like,
no,
please have mercy on all of them. Like, don't kill everybody, because she was on Parem and she could have killed literally everybody. And he was like, you don't want to be like them. Like, don't kill them all.
Right.
Which I think maybe was the right call. I don't know. But he ends up coming back up in the other duology. Zoya is shocked when she hears that name because he's like the scariest, biggest, baddest Druskella that there is. But Nina just says she'll explain more later. She starts to tell them that they have a ship for the Grisha, but Zoya dismisses her until she's like, no, it's a merchant councilman's ship. So, like, it will get out to Ravka. Like, we'll get them out. It's not just, like, a ship that they're going to check and stop. Because apparently the Ravka ship can't get in because of the Council of Tides. Council of Tides, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So she doesn't tell them about Kuwei, though, because she's worried that Zoya would kill him, which is probably fair, because in the last book, Nina and Matthias were both going to kill him to stop Parem from getting out. So Matthias then says to, like, I guess Nina explains to Matthias that she's worried that Zoya would kill him. And Matthias says they all have anger and believe in their causes, including the Druskella, and Nina says they'll have to change their minds. And that is 100% like a bit of foreshadowing into what happens in the King of Scars duology. I haven't read it all, but it's definitely something that comes up again.
Is it?
Yeah. Zoya and Genya go off to like discuss what Nina said, and it's just Nina. Well, before that, Nina asked Matthias about the dust bomb that he like set off, and he says he got it in case he had to fight her off when she was looking for Parem, and he took it today because Grisha. And then she asks him why he hasn't kissed her yet.
So, like, have they not kissed ever? Of course they have. Did they not? Did they not, like, when he did that oath thing with her, like, in front of the clear glass prison-y thing?
I don't think so.
It seems like the time when you would.
I know. I don't think they ever have.
See, this is what I find disbelievable. There is no way that you proclaim your love for somebody without having kissed them at all.
But, so he's very much like...
I know, he's proper.
Pride and Prejudice time.
I know.
Which he kind of gets into.
Circling back to it again.
I know, I had to throw it back in there. So, yeah. So she asks that, and she kind of asks, like, is it because she's Grisha, or is it because of the Parem and how she acted on the boat? And, like, she's feeling a lot of shame about, like, how she acted. Yeah. And he kind of struggles to articulate it, but then he's like, he tells her, like, she changed his life, and he is grateful every day he looks at her, and then, like, every day he knows her. Mm-hmm. And, like, we're in his head, but he looks at her in her Fjordan clothing, which is obviously very frumpy and whatever. Yeah. And he thinks that he wants to push up her skirt and feel her. And
I just took leg from this, because he spoke about her leg. You didn't?
I took the whole... Put her on your lap.
No,
have no clothes on.
No.
I don't know, man. I think he was thinking sexy thoughts. He's on his knees, pushing her skirt up.
Yeah, okay.
Like, I just assumed.
Well, then he says, and the worst part was, he knew how good she would feel. Every cell in his body remembered the press of her naked body that first night in the whaling camp.
Yeah. Yeah. And they still didn't kiss. They were naked, cuddling.
Yeah, right? Although they hated each other, so...
They really did. Well, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then he tells her there's no one he wants more than, like, to be overwhelmed by her. Because, like, he's just so not used to women acting the way she does. Which is just, like... It's almost a trope, but it's not, because it's how, like, the women of his, like, Fjordan women were raised. So it's, like, it's not like she's different than other girls. She's just different than the girls that he knows. But he does explain, kind of like I was saying with Pride and Prejudice, that, in Fjordan, he would have courted her. He would have brought her gifts. Like, they would have gone on chaperone dates, like, that kind of stuff. And he says that, like, Fjordan girls don't flirt with every man they meet. And then she responds that she flirts with the women, too. Which I love.
Yeah, I also love it.
And she asks him if he's jealous. And he says all the time. She also kind of makes a joke about how, like, she'd flirt with plants and they'd stand at attention. And I'm just like, I just love her. Yeah. I love women that love themselves and know their worth. Big fan. She then tells him that she isn't proper, and they won't be either. And then she goes on tiptoe, and she kisses him. And then he takes her in his arms, and he deepens the kiss, and then he kisses her again. And of course, Zoya and Genya show up then. And Nina asks Matthias to put her down, because he picked her up in his need to kiss her, and she's just, like, dangling in his arms.
Love it. I love it. That was a good kiss.
It was a good kiss. There was no foot pop. There was just no feet on the ground.
No, yeah.
Double foot pop.
Oh, that's a good movie too. The Princess Diaries.
Yeah. He didn't even notice he was holding her in the air, which I think is the funniest part.
Yeah. Well, that's how light she must have gotten, because she doesn't eat.
Oh, yeah. That's sad.
Yeah.
I think he was just overwhelmed by having kissed her. So basically Zoya, Genya, all them, they've decided to take Nina's help, and they're like, cool, we'll send Inej back when we have the information about the ship. So, because obviously nobody else can get back there easily, so Inej is the one that has to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Nina sees Tamar and tells her that she can't get captured because a heartrender using Parem is deadly, and Tamar agrees and shows her a tablet and says she won't be taken alive, and then she gives Nina one of these tablets too. And Tamar, you didn't meet her in the Shadow and Bone book, but you did see her in the show.
Yeah.
It's one of the hot siblings that we
Ooh, yeah.
So Matthias is really worried about Nina having the pill because it brings him back to the ship and after the Parem. And she said a lot of really bad things to him, which we kind of get a bit of, but like she told him he's a good soldier but not a good man, and like he has so much guilt over not being able to help her. But he thinks back to one night when she was really struggling and asked him to tell her about the Eisenhoof. And they are big white wolves that are trained to go into battle with the Druskella. And when the wolves are born, the Druskella each go and get one. And it's then their companion. And it's not a pet, it's like they're...
like a brother, like a fellow sibling.
Yeah. It's their like... They go everywhere together. It's like they share all their food. If you get rations, you have to share with your wolf, kind of thing. And in the first book, he had to fight wolves, and he really hated it because of this.
Yeah.
So he also thinks like they even the odds against Grisha, since animals are not actually affected by heartrenderers, which is kind of interesting. So it's only humans that are affected by them. If a Druskella loses their wolf, they are like allowed to train a new one, but it's a great loss. But if a Druskella dies, the other Druskella, I guess, send the wolf into the wild, but no pack will take it after it's like interfered in human stuff or like has that scent. Like I think it's kind of like most animals that are in zoos and stuff can't really be set back out into the wild because they're not, like, they can't integrate back into the wild well. So basically the wolves end up dying in the wild, which is sad, and it's likely what happened to Matthias's wolf. So his wolf was named Trassel, which means troublemaker. And he says they went to the camp when there were new wolves born, and Matthias was 12. And he had joined the Druskella because he wanted to honor his parents and his sister by fighting the Grisha. And his parents and sister were dead. And I think we learned in the last book that Grisha killed them. But I can't really remember if that's then or if that's later. He kind of thinks like he wasn't really friendly with the other boys, and he hung back. Like he really wanted to get a pup, but he knew there might not be enough, and he was just waiting to see what would happen. But then he was drawn to the kennels in the back, and there was a young wolf there, but it wasn't a pup. And the breeder comes and tells him that he doesn't want that one. This wolf doesn't like people because when he was a pup, he ran away and kids cut him with a broken bottle. And like they're gonna have to put him down soon because he can't be civil around other people. Matthias asks for him, but she says no And then she walks away, which I'm like, you can't walk away from a kid that's 12 who wants a dog. Obviously, they're gonna do something dumb. So he obviously does something dumb, and he opens the cage, and the wolf immediately bites him. And he doesn't make a sound or struggle. He just, like, looks straight into its eyes. And he promises not to hurt the wolf, even if the wolf hurts him. And the wolf lets go of him and sits back. And Matthias, like, bandages up his little arm and walks back to the group and says, "This one's mine." And then he passes out.
Yikes.
Yeah. So it's, like, it's cute, but also, like, troubling and devastating. But clearly they, like, formed a bond in that moment, and it's something that he had with him, I guess, until he got lost with Nina that first time on the boat, and everyone thought he died.
Yeah, but, like, I remember, too, him, like, thinking about it, and him being just, he's just not a people person, I guess we'll say, like, Jarl Brum was like, you know, you gotta think of this as your brotherhood, like, these are all your brothers, this is your new family, like, you know, think of it like that, and he was just like, I don't need anybody else. I don't want anybody else. Like, I'm gonna be a Druskella. I'm gonna be the best. Like, I don't want you. Like, I don't want this camaraderie that he spoke of.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because, like, he was already kind of rebelling as a child, and he doesn't really recognize it.
Yeah. And, like, half the reason why he didn't think he'd get a wolf pup is because he knew he wasn't personable. So, like...
Yeah, he wasn't,
the other kids would be going up to the little puppies and being like, oh, look, this one likes me. And, like, the people that own the wolves would be like, yeah, you can have that one. Or, no, that one's not for you. Or, yeah... And, like, he just didn't feel comfortable interacting with anybody, so he didn't think he'd get one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just says a lot about him as a 12-year-old boy.
Yeah. And, like, I feel like this is shortly after his entire family was killed, so I completely understand why he was not feeling it. But, yeah, so that was just kind of like a flashback that he had of on the boat. And he says that every night since, he's dreamed of Nina crying out and him not being able to get to her, and, like, them being on the ice and there being wind. So it's, like, reoccurring nightmare, kind of a throwback to when they, like, first were crashed ashore on the boat and were, like, struggling through his hometown, I forget what it's even called.
Yeah.
I don't think we talk about it this book, but wherever the ice court is, that province. Fjorda, obviously.
Yes.
Duh. Jesus. Anyway, so it's just interesting, because I was kind of trying to think where this comes back, and maybe we'll find it as we read through, but I can't really think of it. And I kind of wonder if it's something to do with one of the future books.
Oh.
Put that thought there. Then Matthias tells Nina that he doesn't know if Perem would even work on her anymore, since he can tell, like, her powers have obviously changed. So he doesn't want her to take the pill if she is captured, because he's like, maybe it won't work on you, and you'll be fine. Which is a very big if. So...
But I guess he just doesn't want her to die.
Oh, 100%. That's why he's saying it. Yeah. But she says that she feels better now since using her new power at the tavern. And she hasn't thought of Perem since then. And she's actually famished, which is not something she's felt since she had Perem in the first place. So you can kind of think that, like, yeah, it's because she's not using her power. This is what happens to Grisha when they don't use their power. They're tired all the time. They're not hungry. All that stuff. Matthias is so happy that she's feeling a bit better. He, like, spins her around, and while she's in his arms, she sees a poster behind him with his face on it, and it says, "Wanted, dead or alive, 50,000 Kruger." So we jump over to Jesper's point of view now, and he's telling Kuei about the plan, but he thinks, like, the plan to get to the Ravka ship and, like, leave, but Kuei is, like, not understanding him, but Jesper thinks that he's being intentionally dumb just to see Jesper make more dumb Jespers. Gestures. I guess if Jesper's doing them, they're Jespers.
Mm-hmm.
Kuei is also, like, getting uncomfortably close to Jesper, which is interesting. It's just, like, you're like, what is going on? And Kuei asks why Jesper is staring at Wylan, since they look the same, and he could just stare at him.
Woo! Does Kuei have a thing for Jesper?
I don't know, man. But Jesper says he's just watching them and the work that they're doing. So Wylan, Inej, and Kaz are working on some safety clips for Inej to use in the silos. And I think this is kind of where, like, I don't think they really explain everything that they are, but they do mention that they're, like, ropes and they have magnets. So I feel like that's how she's going to get her tightrope from silo to silo, is they have magnets on them. I guess she has to, like,
throw it.
I guess.
But then what if it doesn't get completely straight? What if it's like a downward hill or like an upward hill? There's no way you can tightrope a downward hill.
No, but they're all the same height, so it would have to be on the top of each one.
Yeah, but what if she doesn't get the top? What if she gets the
then
side?
She'd have to pull it back and try again. I don't actually remember if that's what she does, but...
Yeah, well, I guess we're gonna find out.
Yeah. But I'm assuming, because what else would they be doing this for?
Yeah.
So they then tell, like, basically Kaz, I guess, tells Nina that they have a boat ready, and it's a shipment of molasses, and it's headed for Oskurvo. It's leaving at 11 bells tonight, and Specht is working on the documents. Nina is happy about that, but then shows them the wanted poster that she found of Matthias, and Jesper says Kaz and Wylan are still in the lead. And
this is my favorite thing ever.
Me too. There are posters of all of them, except for Kuei, obviously, because Van Eyck wouldn't really want a poster of him up so that people know what he looks like. And there's none of Nina, because he doesn't know that Nina is working with them.
Which is awesome for Nina.
100%. And so the one for Wylan is just, like, asking for his safe return, because, obviously. But Kaz's has a reward of 100,000 Kruge. And Jesper's is 30,000. And Jesper's, like, real annoyed by that. But it's kind of cute. I love that moment.
Yeah.
Nina then kind of says they should all go to Ravka, and Kaz says it's not a bad idea, but obviously he won't go. And Jesper wants to get his father back to his farm, and he says, like, they'll wait everything out in the hotel until, like, they can go back out in public. Inej says when she goes back to Ravka, it's going to be on her own ship, so she's not going to do it either. Mm-hmm. And then they start talking about, like, what the plan for tonight is. So Wylan and Kaz are going to steal Van Eyck's seal, and Nina and Inej are going to the silos, and then Kaz gives the Grisha, so Nina, Kuei, and Jesper, some coffee extract to, like, put on, kind of like perfume, because he thinks it might throw off the shoe soldiers' smell. Because, like, the shoe soldiers.
The Sioux shoulders.
Shoulders. It's hard.
It is hard. Shoe soldiers, not Sioux soldiers.
Yeah. So he thinks it might throw off their smell because they can smell Grisha. So, like, if they have, like, the coffee extract, maybe they won't be able to smell whatever they smell over that.
So, like, would they just be like, "Oh, that person drinks a lot of coffee"?
Maybe.
So it's what my students think of me.
But Jesper even says, like, that's how they used to smuggle Jur de Parem, like, out of I don't know, wherever they were smuggling it, they'd put coffee around it. And then it would confuse the dogs. So hopefully their smell is like a dog. Like, this is a lot of ifs, but okay.
Mm.
Kaz asks how many people are going to be on the boat. And Nina says there's 15 refugees plus the 2 leaders, which are obviously Zoya and Genya, but she doesn't tell Kaz their names. And then she adds herself, well, he actually adds her, Matthias, Wylan, and Kuwei. But Wylan says he isn't going. And Kaz isn't surprised. And we're in Jesper's point of view, but Jesper realizes that Kaz knew about Wylan's mother. And he kind of confronts him, and Kaz is just like, yeah, I let you guys go there, and I let you lie to me about the ingredient you needed, because you needed to know how bad your father really is, so that you would be 100% in on this.
Well, yeah.
And
he said, I don't need you angry, I need you righteous.
Yeah.
And
he
it's
says,
true, though.
Yeah. Yeah. He says anger wears off, righteousness doesn't. And Wylan's like, well, you have me.
Yeah. Well, but it's true though, because remember, even just like in my section when we were talking about like the penalty for the dad, like they're setting Van Eyck up to potentially die, like to be hung by like in a trial and be sentenced to death. And Wylan was like, do you really think he'll die? Like, do you really think he'll get the death penalty? Like, he wasn't, like, he still was harboring, like, guilt and remorse, right? He still didn't want his father to come to any harm. Now, after finding out about his mother, like, he is full on, let's do whatever we have to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, like, in the first week, Kaz tells Wylan when they're in the office where he thinks she's buried, and Wylan's even like, he never gives information away for free. This is weird. And he wasn't. He still doesn't give information away for free. It's like, he's so calculating and so shitty sometimes.
Like, one of the best. He would make an amazing chess player.
Yeah.
He should have just did that for a living.
Yeah. I'm sure. So they now decide that Matthias, Jesper, and Kuwei are going to leave for the embassy in an hour and a half, and they're going to take all of the refugees to the boat. Kaz says to Jesper that he's tall, brown, and conspicuous. So we kind of talked about it last week, I think.
Yeah.
That his father seemed Irish.
Yeah, he's like clearly a pale redhead with freckles.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know if we must have gotten a description of Jesper in the last book, and we just didn't really get one in this book until now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does look like the actor that played him.
Yeah.
Presumably. But then Kaz also says he needs to be careful because of that. And Jesper doesn't know if it's concern for him or if it's concern for the job. And he doesn't really want to look at it too closely.
Yeah, I mean, can't it be both?
Like, I think he's praying that it's both. Because he wants Kaz to care about him so badly.
I know, but he thinks they're so like sad. Besties.
Yeah, they're not.
In his mind they are, though.
I know. We'll get to a scene later which, like, deals with all this.
Oh, no. In a bit.
Well, I can't tell you.
Ah!
So they all know what they're doing now, and Jesper goes over to Wylan to, like, talk to him for a minute, and he tells him that, like, he tells Wylan that he can wait it out at the hotel with him and his father, and then kind of as, like, an after thing, he's like, Inej and Kaz can come too, because he like kind of feels a bit awkward about it, and it's super cute. Wylan then asks what he's going to do after, if he'll go home with his father, and Jesper's kind of says that he should, because he should really get out of this like criminal lifestyle and gambling. Like, it's not doing him any favors.
No.
And Wylan says he plans to take his mother out of the asylum and build a life for them. Which is... Would
he even be allowed to do that, though, if it's not Van Eyck
doing it? Like, is anyone allowed to take her out?
Well, if his father's in prison, I presume he could.
All right.
If he has enough money, you can do anything.
Yeah, you're
in this world, like,
yeah.
So I feel like that's, he could also go and be like, hey, I'm the lawyer guy that came around to look before. We're moving her to a new location or something.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
Yeah. Wylan then asks Jesper if this is what he wants, like, for his life, to be a criminal. And Jesper says, honestly, yes, but it's not all that he wants. And I know, it's so sweet, but Kaz has been, like, yelling at Wylan that they're leaving for the last little while. So, like, Wylan has to just, like, get out of there.
Do you know what?
So he leaves with Kaz.
I really expected their relationship to have flourished a little bit more than what it has. Like, they've been flirting nonstop since the first book. I just would have expected a little bit more development in the romantic nature of their relationship.
Yeah. They're also living in, like, intense stress and a tomb.
But you would think that would make it advance faster, because they're in, like, a life or death situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess they're just two awkward boys who can't admit how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
So Nina went to change out of her Fjerdan clothes, and she took Matthias with her, and they come back looking rumpled. Do you think they had sex?
No. I think they just made out a bit.
I don't know, because she says that he's eager to learn, but could use some improvement or something like that. Like, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm like, maybe.
No, I don't think Matthias would have been okay with them having sex for the first. Like, he just admitted that he hadn't kissed her for so long because it wasn't the right, like, he wasn't courting her properly. I cannot imagine, like, I feel like this would be the same sort of culture where they wouldn't have sex until they were married. I can't imagine him letting go of that sensibility so quickly as for them to have sex in the closet.
Yes.
He seems like the type that would want to take his time and, like, figure everything out properly.
So I know they didn't have a super long conversation about it, but she said that they were she's improper and together they are improper if he's going to be with her, and they kissed. So, like, I want to believe that they had sex at this point.
I would like to believe it, but I don't.
I'm gonna do some more Googling and I'll get back to you after we're done this. Next week I'll update you on what the consensus is on the internet.
Love
also,
it.
If you're listening and you have an opinion on this,
let us know.
Let me know. Yeah. Yeah, so Nina and Inej are getting ready to go to the silos, and Jesper wants to apologize to Inej for, like, almost getting her killed before the ice court job, like we keep talking about, but he doesn't know how, and he doesn't really know what to say to her, because, like, realistically, they're all going into very dangerous situations right now, so he's still kind of thinking of, like, what to say, and she comes up and kisses him on the cheek, and, like, her and Nina just leave. So he didn't get a chance to say anything.
But, like, to me, that's a gesture of forgiveness anyway.
Yes, yeah, I think so too. And, like, she even when she was talking about him in, like, the first week's chapters, she was like, she doesn't know if he, like, she knows that he would never purposely hurt her, but he clearly has, like, his gambling issues, and he has issues with people like, his creditors, so, like, even if it isn't purposeful, like, she doesn't trust him to come save her like she does with someone like Nina. And one would hope she now feels with Kaz after he said what he said this week, because, like...
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I think she knows who he is, and she knows, like, kind of where they stand kind of thing is what I got from it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Kuwei is packing up all his shit now, and he's taking all of his notebooks, and he's like, yeah, I need every single fucking one of these. because there's like a million of them. Matthias is worried, but Jesper says it's the time for doing, not the time for worrying. And Matthias replies, or it's the time for dying.
Yikes.
And then he starts talking about Nina because she isn't at her best and he's really worried about her. So he's worried that she's going to die. And she's the only one looking after Inej. Like, there's nobody else helping her. So it's like, that's not good.
No.
Yeah. He asks Jesper, Matthias does, ask Jesper again what happened at the lake house. And Jesper actually tells him this time, he says he's not sure, but he thinks that she choked a guy with a cloud of dust.
Love it.
Which is interesting.
Love it, love it, love it.
We might get some more information about that later.
Ooh!
They ask Kuwei if Perem could alter Agrisha's power. Because she's used a cloud of dust, she's used some bones. Like, what is going on with her power? Like, she normally used to be able to control what happened in a person's body. So they ask Kuwei if, like, using Perem and, like, after detoxing from it, if it could change her powers. But he says that they don't know. Like, there are so few Grisha who have lived through the withdrawal process that there's no way that they would be able to tell, because they'd have to, like, know someone else, basically. And Jesper says they obviously didn't cut enough Grisha open to find out, and he's, like, very... You can tell his tone is angry, and Kuwei asks if he's angry with him. And Jesper says no, but Matthias says he's clearly angry and frightened. And Kuwei says Jesper is brave. And it kind of seems like he might have a little crush on him.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of something, like...
I think there's a little something.
Matthias asks Jesper why he isn't going to Ravka. Because he could go there and he could, like, learn how to be a Grisha and, like,
be safe.
Use his gifts and be safe. Yeah, and not have to worry about being hunted. Jesper brings up his father, obviously, but Matthias is like, he could obviously go with you. It'd be fine. And Jesper is, like, so angry about how Grisha are treated. Kuwei touches his hand. Jesper's hand.
Oh my god! I did not pick up on this until right now.
The undertones?
The undertones of Kuwei having a thing.
Yeah. I don't think I did my first read either. But he touches his hand and tells them both that his father was actually trying to find a way to suppress Grisha power so they could hide in public and not be, like, it wouldn't be obvious. So, like, if a Grisha doesn't use their power, they end up getting tired, sick, they lose their appetite, and, like, you can tell. And sometimes that's how people figure out that someone's Grisha, is because they always are tired, sick, and all that stuff. Jesper disagrees, because he says he doesn't use his power, and he's none of those things. Like, I know we've talked about it a bunch, but he clearly uses his power all the time.
This is what I was referring to.
Yeah, when you started saying something and then you were like, wait.
Yeah, this is exactly... Like, he says he doesn't use his power. Like, really?
Yeah.
He doesn't... Does he not realize it, or is he just in denial?
I think he doesn't realize it, because his mother taught him how to shoot. And she taught him how to use his power. So, like, he doesn't think he's using it when he's shooting. But he obviously is, because she taught him to, like, we kind of get into it, like, in a few sentences, basically. But she taught him how to shoot while running and while on a horse, like, and hit targets. And she says, like, anybody can shoot, but aiming is what people can't learn. And I think aiming is what she taught him to do.
With power.
With power, yeah. But, so I don't think he realizes, which is dumb.
Yeah, he needs to smarten up.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's Jurda on the table that Kuwei has, and Jurda is a stimulant, so Kuwei says his father thought that it could, like, make Grisha seem less tired, and maybe if he, like, mixed it with something, he could make it suppress their powers. Obviously, it did the complete opposite, so there's probably a way you could figure out how to do it. And that, like, that's what he was trying to figure out, and he's also trying to figure out an antidote, and that's why Kuwei has been, like, poring over his father's journals, because he's like, he can figure this out. Or he's hoping that he can go to Ravka and find some fabricators that can help him figure it out, type thing.
Yeah.
But he's an Infirni. He's not a fabricator. He's not his father, so it's harder for him to try to, like, actually physically fabricate something. Jesper's kind of holding a Jurda flower in his hand, and he thinks of when he was little, he figured out he could drain the color out of the Jurda flower, and he did that to write a swear word in the field of their house, of their farm. And his father was furious, and he thought it was because he had written a swear word, but it was actually because he was worried about him, and he told him to promise to never use his power again, because it only brought misery for his mother. So he starts thinking about his mother then, and he says she always had energy for him, and, like, she taught him everything he knows, like how to shoot, and they had secret lessons where she would make bullets from the minerals in a dried up lake bed, and she would boil water on the stove, like water without, like, turning on the stove, and she'd take, like, stains out of clothes without, like, with just waving a finger.
Which sounds amazing. I wish I could do that.
Oh my god, right?
I would
so
save
so
many clothes.
Right?
God.
Oh, it'd be so good. So his father worried that slavers would get both of them, obviously, because they were both Grisha. And she would, like, help people out, though, and I guess many people in their village knew that she was a Grisha, and she would help heal people. So she kind of said, like, she tried to tell him, like, it's her duty to help because she can, but he argued that it was her duty to be there for her son. Jesper says thinks, this is all in his head too, when he was 7, she left in the night to help someone's child, and the next morning she wasn't home yet, so they went to the house that she was helping at. And a girl that was, like, a few years older than Jesper had drank from a well that was dug too close to a mine, and her 2 friends drank from it too, and they died in the night. But Jesper's mother saved this girl. But she, of course, extracted the poison into herself. So
yeah, it was like a mineral or something, like something that is just bad for you in groundwater or something like that.
Yeah. Like, I guess it was too close to a mine of something that is not good for you.
Yeah.
So obviously she ended up dying from that. She, like, pulled all this poison into herself. Jesper thinks, like, the years that they spent on the farm, he and his father worked together, but it wasn't enough for him. It's not a life that he could go back to. So that's why he doesn't think he can just go back to the farm with his father. Jesper then tells them that his mother used to soak the stalks of the Jurda plant in milk and give it to him when he was a child to counteract the Jurda fumes in the fields. So Jurda's a stimulant, but his mother used to give him the stalks to, like, counteract the stimulant. So they start to kind of piece together and wonder if the antidote could be found in the, like, stalks of the Jurda plant, which is super interesting. And I don't know if it comes up in a future book because I haven't gotten there yet, but, like, it must, because I'm sure Jurda comes up again. And yeah, so it's definitely interesting. I want to know more about it. But then all of the windows break, and they look out, and there are a lot of people around. And we end on another cliffhanger. This one's a big one.
It is a big one. I wonder how they're gonna get out of this. Wylan's not around to get to, like, Wylan's not around to save the day. Nina's not around to save the day.
Right? it's like, it's kind of dumb because they're on an island. Like, what can you do? You can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's something.
Well,
I guess we'll see what happens.
I do know, because I just looked at the chapter titles, that it's Matthias that we're gonna hear the scene unfold from. It's not?
Is it? Oh, yes.
It
Yes.
is.
Sorry. I was like, no, it's not, but it is.
It
yes.
is. So
Inej is the next point of view.
Yes.
So of course we skip from a
we're
very
gonna have
tense
to
part
wait a little bit in order to get it, but it's gonna be Matthias.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I wonder if he's finally gonna pull his weight, because as of right now he's done nothing but like walk around and just glower at everybody.
Yeah. I still love him.
I do too.
So that wraps it up for this week. If you do want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com or on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at coffeeandcoread.
Yeah, so next week we will be reading a chunk, chapters 17 to 29 of Crooked Kingdom. So make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our little chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.